Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott back. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? Anything new and exciting in the world of Cameron?
Yeah, I lost my job.
Hooray! Okay, so, that sucks. Sorry.
That's okay. I know. I've
yeah,
been talking about like how much I love my new job, how great it is.
yeah,
Last Saturday, I just it just all fell apart, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, that was pretty awful. Um,
yeah. I had seen your tweet about um, parted ways. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And so my first thought was just
have you never been
somebody.
fired?
I mean, no, I've never referred to it as we've parted ways.
Oh, that's a
um,
really nice way of saying basically like parting ways
yeah,
is a nice way of basically saying like you haven't really like getting fired has the connotation of like you've done something wrong or you've like
hmm
seriously messed up or just you are just the like
yeah,
you are just any like there's the door, don't let it hit you or the good Lord split you. Like that's what firing usually has. So when it's less of that and it's more of like a
hey,
um
this just isn't the right fit.
yeah, or it's like for me in particular, it was, hey, I don't think like there's a clear picture what's happened, but like this isn't happening, and so we gotta part ways, like you gotta go.
Yeah.
It really is more of
It-
like a hey, it's not us, it's you, and we need to part ways.
yeah.
Um,
We had
yeah.
I had seen it and not thinking of it in that context. I guess also in part I wasn't thinking of it in terms of a job because you had just gotten that job.
I
So
know, right?
it definitely felt like abrupt. Um but so I when I read it I was like, "Oh, like did somebody reach out on social media and was like, "Hey, best of luck to you, but I can't follow you and what you're talking about it." Like that was what I thought it was like a family member or like a Facebook friend was like, "You're way too in a different political sphere than I am, and so I just don't want to deal with that anymore, so we're parting ways." That was how I
Oh,
read the
that's how you
thing.
read it? Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Dude, I posted a giant Black Lives Matter post and nobody unfriended me that I know of.
Hmm. But
And even if like they did unfriend me, like good riddance.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um but yeah, it's, sorry to hear that you'd lost the job, and best wishes to you in the new job search, and hopefully you find something else and land on your feet again soon. As I said kind of privately when I reached out, if there's anything I can do,
Yeah,
feel
for
free to let
sure.
me know.
I really appreciated that. But
Yeah.
it's coming at a time where, I there's for what I do for work with for people who don't know, I graduated with like a degree in basically social media and just overall media analytics basically. Is a good way of like summarizing it. So there's no lack of jobs out there for me. It's just a matter of, even though I graduated from like the third or fourth best program in the country, the really awesome jobs I'm competing with people from the schools that were like better than mine.
Hmm.
Um, and that's something I found out early on when I was in an initial job search. But like last time I was unemployed for technically I stopped my job in March working for ASU, and moved into I did an internship in the meantime, and then it ended with me um, getting a job end of July, beginning of August of last year. So I had roughly depending on how you want to think about it, I had 3 to 6 months of unemployment. Um, I consider it 6 months because I didn't get paid for my internship. So
Hmm. Yeah.
um, I did that, and then the I'm anticipating like a similar time frame, but at the same time, I have experience now. So I have experience in my prior to when I went back to school work experience, which is you know 5 to 8 years worth of just interpersonal communication experience and like customer service experience.
Yeah.
Enough that I could definitely say like I can manage a team of people in customer service if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I don't want to because customer service is a hellscape. Um, phone based customer service is the like disgusting corporate underbelly where if you want to know how these corporations make so much money, it's because they outsource all of their customer service to these grungy, like really screwed up, like third party call center places that are just like gross as hell.
Just go watch Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah, Sorry to Bother You is a great example of that. Like I watched Sorry to Bother You, and I'm like, yeah, it is like that.
Yeah.
And like you like, and here's the thing: I have definitely worked with people who were people of color who did have to put on like 100% like white voices with white names, because that's the only way to get people to get white people to talk to you. It's a and on top, like I used to work. A good example of this is I used to work in a place that, in order to save money, would only turn on half the lights on the floor.
Nice.
So like half the lights were all, and like I worked in one place where everything but the floodlights that are mandatory and required to stay on were off. Like to save money. To save money on like, and it's not just like on the floor. In actual offices, like the actual like people who are in charge of the center, they would have like a single lamp that they were allowed to have on, but there are like overhead lights they weren't allowed to have on.
It's interesting thinking of that as like a cost-cutting measure because I've worked at a couple places where like people just didn't like the fluorescent lights, and so they would kind of like basically actively just not turn them on to get like the natural sunlight that was coming in from the building, or just like personal places, lamps and stuff like that.
Yeah, by the way, places,
of course these places don't have natural sunlight. No. I know.
There are bunkers built to like desensitize you to the fact that like you like it gets to the point where like you envy people who smoke because they have to go outside to smoke.
Yeah.
And they come back in from their like, and it's, but at the same time I don't envy them because they have to walk back inside, and walking back inside on your like after your break's over is like one of the worst like feelings you get because you have to like go back once again into the breach. It's like it's a nightmare. So I did that for way too long, which is honestly, if you do that at all, I think it's way too long. But I digress. So I am I my education, my prior work experience, my current work experience. I did my job working third party I was kind of like shady, not shady, but so much as like just not being specific about it. I worked as a third party contractor for Facebook, working as a marketing expert for small to medium sized businesses, and I did that for about a year, and then I started this job, which I got because I did that priorly. Anyway, at the end of the day, I'm just looking for work. That was a weird long diatribe to get to the point where it's like I'm looking for work.
Yeah. So if you're looking to hire and can deal with Cam remotely or something like that, which most jobs should really be able to at this point.
Most jobs right now are remote.
Yeah. Hit Cam up at Rev Cabot.
Hit me up on Twitter at Rev Cabot. And on top of that, I will also say if the job is like temporary remotely and then would require me to move out of state, I am definitely on board for that.
Not opposed to that either.
Not at all.
We're dealing with record-setting temperatures again in Arizona this year.
Yeah, there's that.
It's kind of like I'm ready to bounce out of the state too, personally.
I mean, just Arizona. Like I love Arizona for like so many reasons. There are so many amazing things about this state, but the things that are bad about them are just monumental. Mm-hmm. And I've said it before, until we let Sun City, like honestly, what we should do, just cut the power to Sun City for a week. Like oopsies, and then because then all the terrible rich old people will be dead.
I don't remember the specifics of it, but I remember I did a writing assignment in, I want to say like my high school humanities class. The assignment was kind of, we read Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal, which is the very satirical piece where he proposes that, for population control, you eat the babies or something. and it was basically like come up with your own like version of that. And mine was something to the effect of like let all of Sun City like retirees die or something like that. I don't remember the specifics of it, but it definitely had something to do with the Sun City community in Arizona.
Yeah, for people who don't know, Sun City
and
is a residential area of Phoenix that is
yeah,
filled with a bunch of rich old people who suck.
yeah, it's basically like all of the snowbirds, which are the people who live elsewhere most of the year, but they come out here for the winters because we're not snowy, and so they have basically second homes, and many of them in Sun City, and they're like they've passed a lot of like legislation, I want to say, to like only so that only like retirees effectively can live in their communities. So it's like super gentrified, super bullshit, super like yeah, old white folks.
Imagine, if
out
you
there.
will, an entire residential
It's
area made
Florida.
up of Karens.
Yes, old Karens.
Old
Yeah.
Karens
Anyway,
and Kevins who settled down in Sun City.
yeah. Um, well, best luck on you getting the job in or out of state anytime soon. Obviously, we can continue doing these shows remotely and stuff as we have been. So
Considering
if you
most of the
move
team lives in
away,
another city.
exactly. No big deals there anyway. But yeah, this is That Nerdy Site Show. If you enjoy what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you are feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. But yeah, let's just dive right on into to the show. Obviously, we are recording this the day after DC FanDome here in August. So that's kind of one of the big topics of the show, I guess. What were some of the big takeaways from you from the DC FanDome show yesterday, Cam?
One word, Trevor. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I was like, there can be any number of one words that came out of that show. Like Battison was one that I absolutely could have seen you making.
No, I did that specifically because, ladies and gentlemen, the Snyder Cut not only is real, it's 4 hours long.
It's going to be 4 hours long, broken up into 4 1-hour parts. It's going to be a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's an unedited, like reworked, like new monstrosity of a film, and here's the thing, I'm here for it because this is something that's never been done before. I'm curious because like at the end of the day, like I think it was Greg Miller who talked about it afterwards, who he said the situation was they gave Zack Snyder like carte blanche to do whatever he wanted, and then over the course of the production slowly took away that carte blanche and gave him more and more restrictions, took more and more away from him. And then in the midst of like the turmoil of basically like them moving in direction to remove him from the project, his daughter dies.
Mm-hmm.
She unfortunately took her life, and like this incredible great personal tragedy happens to him and his wife. And so like they leave the project completely and then they're like, well, we're gonna bring in Joss Whedon, who like helped with Kevin Feige to sculpt the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, cool. And then you get reports out that Joss Whedon was maybe not the best person to work with, and the creative team that kind of replaced Zack Snyder were not the best people to work with. And also the studio said, hey, Joss, we're going to let you direct, but we're going to tell you what we want, and you have to give it to us. And gave him like no creative liberties on it, which probably made for a not great work environment with Joss Whedon, who is known, if he like, it's kind of like an unspoken thing, but if Joss Whedon doesn't get like the creative control that he wants at this point in his career, he can kind of get a bit tiffy.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way of saying he's kind of a giant asshole.
Yeah. I like my thoughts were petulant child, but
yeah.
Admittedly, I obviously don't know the guy. I've never worked with him personally or anything like that. But yeah, that seems to be what the stories kind of all say, is that like, yeah, cool, he helped create Avengers and got that off the ground, and obviously like going back to the Buffy and Angel days and stuff like that. But
And of
yeah,
course, the legendary Firefly, which,
yeah,
the thing is, it's like I don't think Joss Whedon is by any means a bad like creator or a like, but it's very like he is a very in the current age he is basically like quasi problematic,
hmm
and the only reason I think that he hasn't been called out in a more meaningful way um, is because he does his best to just he's not an outspoken personality.
yeah,
Um, but like you hear like stories of people who've worked with him and they're like, well, he's amazing, he's great, etc., etc. And then you hear from other people, he's a petulant child, he's difficult to work with,
yeah.
he's a jerk. And then you hear from his ex-wife, um, he's a fraud. Anyway, I like getting away from the man's personal life.
But yeah,
But
so
like Joss
yeah,
Whedon wasn't given
there
a
there
lot
were
of liberty.
there were lots of issues with
Yeah,
Justice League.
Justice
Basically,
League. Yeah,
boils down to Justice League wasn't great, in part because it was two different directors' visions as well as a studio's vision that had drastically changed as like the DCEU wasn't hitting the levels of success that Marvel had. So
yeah.
they wanted to kind of try and about face. All that said, I don't like.
I've never
I
seen
don't think.
Justice League.
Oh, you've never seen Justice League?
No, so here's the thing. After Batman v Superman, I was like, well, let's see how Justice League does.
I mean,
And
what are your thoughts on just the Snyderverse in general then? On Man of Steel and Batman v Superman?
I'm of the opinion that there are definitely parts of it that I'm not a fan of, but like Batman v Superman, this is me, this is 100%. Cam is a dumb bitch. He's this giant lore nerd. He obsesses over these tiniest details. For 20, however many long years, it never occurred to me once that both Batman and Superman's mothers were both named Martha.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am, like, for that moment to hit, and I'm like, whoa, and everybody's like, how stupid is that? And I'm like, I am stupid. I am the
So
dumb one.
here's the thing though. Like I'm in that boat in that I hadn't realized it either. And so I had a split second in watching Batman v Superman the first time of like, wow. And then it was immediately followed up by, but that is not at all how this conversation would naturally occur. And like the execution of that idea was just so abhorrent to me that I was like, this is the dumbest thing. Yeah, I hadn't pieced those two things together, and it's like a great idea that just flopped in execution for me.
I felt like Gia Tap Harris when she found out that at the beginning of Batman v Superman that Batman's parents,
That Bruce Wayne's parents die, yeah.
I think that's still my favorite story to come out of Batman v Superman is that like Gia,
Yeah.
like 100% was like shock at it. She's like, I can't believe that happened.
This is why we get those pearls in every goddamn movie.
Because people need to know. The pearls.
Be curious to see if we get them in the Batman.
I like that the Batman's not leaning towards telling an origin story. It feels very much. Oh, so let's go ahead and hop into this. So, DC FanDome overall, the Snyder Cut is it is demanded by fans of the Snyderverse. They're getting it. That's awesome. Congrats to them. I think
I'm
torn.
I'm
there's
torn
that,
on the
but
thing.
also, and I'm about to get into that. But also, the harassment that has also happened. Way
Yeah.
not cool, you guys.
I was very put off by the fact that so much of that panel was celebrating like a couple of the people who led kind of the Snyder Cut movement. And it's like I get that those people were maybe doing it for good reasons and doing it because they wanted to honor Zach's legacy and maybe he'd even done some fundraising stuff as a result of it. But like so clearly that campaign got hijacked by just bullshit harassment trolls, and the fact that they didn't like call those people out just annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah, I kind of felt that way about it. That's kind of why I joked at the beginning, hallelujah. Also, he just shouldn't be doing that because the entire time in the back of my head I'm thinking about fat, out of shape
This,
night owl trying to bang Silk Spectre.
I mean, oh yeah, like that trailer, like I saw it when it leaked earlier in the day, and I was like I as soon as Hallelujah started, I was like, oh, okay, this is like a fake trailer or whatever. This is gonna end with a Rickroll or something like that. And then it didn't, and then it was sure enough, it was the one that like they actually released later in the day, and I was just like, I don't, why is this, why like,
Here's the thing, I
and
get it.
like
I get it. It's
I
a
know
miracle
exactly
that
why.
this film got made,
It's
that it got
it's
redone.
no, it's not even that. It's Zack Snyder is very enamored with like religious iconography and
That's true.
and so like that is a song that he goes back to time and time again, and a lot of the images in there he goes back to time and time again, and it's just like there are Snyderisms in the same way that there are Sorkinisms, where it's just like,
Yeah.
if you have seen enough of this stuff, it's just like, okay, he's just hitting all the same beats he usually hits. There's nothing new and refreshing here. I don't know, like it did nothing for me. And I don't like. I have no expectations. I hope it's good for the people that want it to be good. I don't expect it to be good because I saw the trajectory of like I liked Man of Steel, and then I did not like Batman v Superman, and then I did really not like Justice League. And I don't imagine that like taking the Joss Whedon-y things out of Justice League is going to make me like Justice League anymore. Like I think so much of that just like Zack Snyder, I don't think is telling the version of those characters that I want him to be telling. So I don't know. Yeah, it like I enjoyed Shazam because Shazam was so much more of a lighthearted kind of thing, completely removing itself from the Snyderverse. I liked Aquaman because Jason Momoa is a charismatic like guy who has a lot of fun in that role, and it was basically like the Battle of Helm's Deep but underwater with CGI
I
shit.
still gotta watch that. I haven't watched Aquaman either.
Like it's like Aquaman is absolutely like turn your brain off and this is just a dumb like action movie, versus like all of the like beating you over the head with like Superman as Jesus iconography that Snyder put into Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. I'm just like, I don't like. He's he's great at imagery, and that's like the best thing that is in his like Watchmen is that like it like they feel like comic book panels like put to film, but like the image I always think of in I think in Batman v Superman is Superman like hovering above the flooded plains of whatever, and like the families are on the rooftops and they've painted the Superman symbol, and he's just like standing above them, you know, against the clouds or whatever. It's just like that is a very visually stunning shot, but if you think about it for any time of like what is happening before that moment or after that moment, it's like, what the fuck is Superman doing? Help those fucking people. Like why is he standing above them just looking down at them like reveling in his glory or what? Like that is not Superman. Superman should be helping those people. And the fact that like we don't see those moments of him helping the people, we see
their worship,
you know, the not even their worship, the Zack Snyder worship moments just drives me crazy. So I have no expectations for Justice League, and the trailer did nothing to like sway me one way or the other. It's like, okay, clearly they're gonna do more with Cyborg in that story, which like feeds into the Ray Fisher like very anti Joss Whedon narrative that is out there. Like he clearly got, you know, the short shrift in the Whedon version of that film, and I'm just like, I don't know if Cyborg is going to suddenly make me care about that movie though. So
see, I will say that the thing about Schneider that I enjoy is that I don't think I've ever seen a single one of his movies and not eaten up the visuals. Like even to the point where what is that film that he made? Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch?
Yeah. Sucker Punch to me was a movie I walked in, I turned my brain off, and I'm like, okay, cool. It's kind of like he saw Inception and he was like, what if I did that but with like anime and shit? And like I'm like, oh cool, it's like It's like kind of like like these fantasy things are like whatever, who cares? Like it's great visual like appetite, like I just ate that up appetite wise as far as visuals go. And when it comes to like any Schneider film, I always feel like the visuals kind of like are the big selling point to it. Um, and I feel like he does extremely well when the plot isn't that complicated. The plot of Watchmen is not that complicated.
I mean, I vehemently disagree with that,
I
but
think. Well,
I
let me
think
rephrase
the
it.
plot of the Watchmen film is not complicated.
No. Sorry.
I think
Yeah, the film of it is not complicated. Also, actually, let me rephrase that because he didn't write that, so that doesn't really apply.
yeah, yeah,
300 he didn't write that doesn't really apply. But you take a film with like you take a film with a very basic concept like 300, which is oily, muscly dudes have to defend a pass against a giant army. Um, let's go, and like that's it. And then you have other things that have to do. Now, I also have been reading like there was a really interesting like couple of papers that I read while I was in college about the how the iconography and the how Frank Miller's 300 basically uh, was utilized as propaganda against the Middle East for the purpose of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. Which is fascinating. If you want to, you can like that can be extra reading. Go look those up. It's a very interesting like take on that story in that film.
okay,
Like it's very cool. I highly suggest it just because like they're like in the film and his book they're fighting for democracy. Sparta was a monarchy, and not only that, but Sparta was like also had a deep inherent slave culture. Like freedom was not like a really big thing for the Spartans. Um, and like other stuff like that. It like it's a fast like there's fascinating deconstructions off on 300, but I felt that like that Superman Return or not Superman Returns, but Man of
Man of Steel.
Steel. I felt like there are so much like so many parts of that film that I feel work, and there's obviously the parts that don't work. But the thing about it is it captured a feeling of and the visuals really told this story of a man isolated from the rest of the world. And it fed into that kind of this is the burden that Clark bears. This is what he has to deal with, and then when he encounters people who are like him, but like physically and like biologically, but ideologically are just completely opposed to each other. And it's like, how does he reconcile that? There's that part where he destroys basically like the hatchery of like the genetic material for children. Uh, like he destroys that. Essentially, like that. I mean, that's a massive part in the film that I don't think people realize is that when he destroys that, it's him ending the traditional traditional Kryptonian way of reproducing, and he's virtually ending a possible future for his race. And it's this like, and so when he cries out at the end and all that stuff, like there's a lot of things that don't work about that, but I always found that the feeling of isolation and the feeling of being alone that Man of Steel captured, I did not feel carried over very well to Batman v Superman. Um, that being said, I think one of the biggest highlights of all of the Snyderverse films are he's really good at picking really good people to play these roles. Uh,
yeah,
like like the casting that he does, I don't think there's ever been a casting that he's done that I haven't thought was excellent. Um, like I'm trying to
yeah.
think like
I can get behind that.
yeah, like he's really good at, and I think it comes down to just the visual aspect of it. When it comes down to finding people that fit these roles, that can help these characters feel real and lived in, and he does a great job of doing that as well as creating the world around them with a, like you said very clearly, there's religious iconography throughout all of like Snyder's look at Superman, especially in Batman v Superman. And like from what I understand, it's supposed to be like like Superman becomes Batman's Jesus from like what all I can tell from Justice
Oh,
League.
Superman is just literally Jesus in the like in that whole thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he like
it's
they're like
uh,
we do it for him. Like it's like okay, so
yeah. I don't think the movie's going to be made exponentially better by adding more of Zack Snyder's ideas to it. But shout out to it existing. I guess
like,
sure.
here's the thing,
It will be an interesting experiment.
it will be.
But
And I think it's very interesting if like, oh, this movie didn't go very well. Well, let's like take another crack. Like, hey, team, take another crack at it. Maybe I don't know. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird that this is happening. And I think that's kind of like where I ended on. Like, I hope it works out. I hope it's good. I hope it satisfies the people who really wanted to see this, to see his vision, to see his cut of the film. Like, I hope that works out for him.
Yeah. Any other standouts from FanDome that you want to highlight?
Oh yeah.
You got the Batman.
The Batman. Matt Reeves, the Batman. Yeah. No, that trailer kicked ass.
Yeah, I was really happy with that. Like that interested me more.
Oh yeah, no, that was
talked about that on the show.
That got me very, very hyped.
Like we talked about it on the show a while back that like I had mentioned my concerns that it's going to do the same thing that like we always rail against like the the Spider-Man 3 doing of like too many bad guys, because you have Catwoman, Penguin, and Riddler all like are in that film, as well as like Falcone and stuff like that. And so it's like, okay, hopefully they don't overstuff it.
I don't think they will, because it looked like here's the thing, and this is why I don't, from what they were showing, I don't feel like Catwoman or the Penguin are quote unquote bad guys so much as other characters in the world. The bad guy is clearly the Riddler. And by the way, Paul Dano as the Riddler is one of the like best casting choices you could have ever done for this role. I have been a massive fan of his since Little Miss Sunshine, where like he captivated me with his like he's silent, like he takes basically like a silent protest throughout the entire film about his parents not letting him join the Air Force or whatever. And then when he does speak, it's such a profound like moment, not because he says something very wise, but because he makes a personal discovery that basically like deeply changes his perspective on what his future can be. And it is such a excellent capture of that feeling of there's nothing, like I've just realized something, there's nothing I can do to fix it, like this is like my dreams are shattered. And he does that so well. And then throughout everything else that I've ever seen him in he's always captivated me as this phenomenal performance in Prisoners. He steals scenes away from Hugh Jackman and Jamie Foxx. Not Jamie Foxx. Colin Farrell. I think that's right. Colin Farrell and Hugh Jackman were in Prisoner. No, Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal. There it is.
I have no idea. The only thing, like, I don't think I've seen Paul Dano in anything.
Oh, really?
Until you mentioned Little Miss Sunshine. I was like, oh, I've seen Little Miss Sunshine, but that was so long ago. I was like, who is he in that? And I look at the thing as you were talking. I was like, oh, he was one of the kids. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, I guess, given the timing of that. But like, it's been 14 years since I saw that movie, so I'm like, like the moment that you're talking about, I vaguely remember that character, but I don't. Like nothing of that really jumps out at me as like any of that stuff. So yeah, I just don't know the performer all that well. I mean, I've heard good things about him, and people are excited about the casting. So great, cool. But I just don't have anything to go off of. I just remember, and it was interesting. Like when Robert Pattinson got announced as Batman, I was like, okay, I'll, like, give him a shot. Sure, I'm not gonna hold Twilight against him in the same way that I didn't hold Good Will Hunting against Ben Affleck or something. And it was interesting because I got a Facebook.
You had a problem with Good Will Hunting?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying like I'm not holding the past of Ben Affleck against him being a superhero or something like that.
Okay, that's
actually
okay,
I don't think I've actually ever seen Good Will Hunting.
Oh, that's a great film. I highly suggest it.
Yeah, I hear good things. But like I Ben Affleck. It was interesting because I got a Facebook reminder yesterday of like, hey, 7 years ago you were at a Bare Naked Ladies concert, and I was at that Bare Naked Ladies concert with my friend Brooke because we were big Bare Naked Ladies fans. And I remember while we were in line grabbing drinks at the bar or something, seeing the news that Ben Affleck had been cast as Batman, and so like that is all tied together in my mind. And so, yeah, yesterday was the 7-year anniversary of Ben Affleck being announced as Batman. And so interesting that's also when we get, our first good look at Robert Pattinson in the cape and cowl. Just like, oh, hey, interesting. But yes.
I'm sorry. It's like
I've been to like 3 concerts in my life, and Bare Naked Ladies is one of my favorite bands.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair.
It was like at a casino and everything.
I have known you for years, Trevor. I have known you for years, and I did not know you were a Bare Naked Ladies fan.
Yeah. It's interesting because I got into them when 1 week hit, and I remember specifically like this was back in the day where if you wanted to like record music off the radio, it was like sitting there waiting for it to play and then having a tape in the tape player. And I sat there and waited for 1 week to come on and recorded it on a tape, and then taught myself the lyrics from just re-listening to that song over and over and over again. And then I when I eventually bought Stunt and Maroon, I would just listen to those kind of on repeat to the point that I am forever linked Chrono Cross as the PlayStation 1 game Chrono Cross. That is forever linked in my mind with Stunt and Maroon because I played that game while I was like listening to those albums, like just so I will always hear one and think of the other, or play Chrono Cross and think of Bare Naked Ladies, and then I've continued to enjoy their music over the years. I come and go because I'm not much of a music guy in general, but yeah, Bare Naked Ladies, they're probably my Bare Naked Ladies, Weird Al, Childish Gambino, and now kind of Smash Mouth are the 4 concerts I've been to. And Smash Mouth, I didn't know I was going to a Smash Mouth concert at the time.
Nobody knew we were going to a Smash Mouth concert. It was amazing.
Yeah.
To say that we went to that's the best part I think about Kind of Funny Prom was it's really just a prom themed party that we went to.
Yeah.
And that then turned into a secret Smash Mouth concert.
Yep.
Which is possibly the most 90s thing that could have ever happened.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyway, Paul Dano plays the Riddler. We got a sneak peek at that. Love it. I love they are leaning into. Matt Reeves said that he really wanted to invest and take time into the more detective aspect of Batman rather than just the superhero aspect. And so the Riddler's the perfect villain for that. That's why I don't think. I think Colin Farrell's Penguin and Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman are going to be really more characters that help flesh out the world around it, and less about. And in a similar way that Year One is definitely a great inspiration, according to Matt Reeves, and in that you do see a little bit of Catwoman, a little bit of other characters. But the focus really is in the comic book. The focus is Batman's essentially war with the police when they're trying to crack down and get him before basically they enter the rough armistice before they become true allies. Because they're anyway. I was gonna make some social commentary, but that's been beaten into the ground. Yeah. That horse is long since dead. But I really
definitely enjoyed the tone of the trailer. I think the standout moment from the trailer is Batman just beating the shit out of that seemingly Joker thug.
So good.
And he just it just goes on so much more uncomfortably longer than you're expecting it to. And it almost feels like a reaction to people being like, how's Robert Pattinson gonna be, a compelling Batman? It's like, this is fucking how.
It's amazing. The suit he's wearing is the best suit I think that we've ever seen for Batman. Because not only can you turn your head, which is somehow took years for us to
Yeah.
create the technology to turn your head. To the point where it was a punchline in Dark Knight. Um, like a big thing about it though is that uh, the like his outfit and costume is like he's so mobile in it. There's no like block, like block, big punch and they're out, or a couple hits and they're out. He is like straight up blocks hits and then like just goes in for the like just beating the crap out of that guy, and it's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good and it's so brutal, and you can see his eyes in the outfit. You don't have any like it's so good. And for me the scene that I take away from actually like possibly my favorite two scenes. One, when we see the guy on the motorcycle and we don't know who it is just yet because he's like, you know, grunged up hair, eyeliner and like a face mask pulled up, like a writing mask pulled up over his mouth, and then
Oh, I definitely caught that was him.
I didn't pick up that it was him right away. And then like later at the end when he's in the helmet is off, the cape is off, and he's just like there, and he's like, how am I part of it? And it's like, you'll find out. And it's just like this like haunted look that he has going on with the eyeliner, and the like just he's just so good at like, it's just like if you had been like, hey, Robert Pattinson in Twilight looks like this, and then Robert Pattinson as Batman looks like this, and it's like, oh my gosh, just like the absolute, he looks so good. And I like that they're leaning into this feeling of, I think the comic's called First Halloween, which is essentially like an early era. It sets up Harvey in like the post-crisis universe. It sets up Harvey Dent, Commissioner Gordon, and Batman's like internal relationship between the three of them that is further explored in The Dark Knight. But is like it's done. They're doing that like they're taking out themes from that. I feel like this like because the comic book is very much more of a detective focused narrative than a superhero driven narrative. And I like the idea of like we're going to do that, but we're also going to be there's also feelings of like the atmosphere of it feels like macabre, and reminds me a lot of Arkham Asylum, A Serious Place on Serious Earth. Like I tweeted that out. Like this is like the feeling that I'm getting from it. It's like this macabre, kind of grounded but twisted.
So that was an acronym because you saw that or you tweeted that, and I was like, what the hell is Arkham Asylum Ashane or whatever?
Sorry, that was definitely some inside baseball for people who are familiar with the comic.
Yeah.
Arkham Asylum, A Serious Place on Serious Earth is basically the foundation. Arkham Asylum was always kind of like a place that people went to, or like Batman might be like, it might be scenery. It's really explored and fleshed out. It's written by Grant Morrison, and in traditional Grant Morrison fashion, it is super up its own ass. However, also in Grant Morrison fashion, it's kind of brilliant in a lot of ways. It is the first comic that kind of establishes Arkham Asylum as a deeper mythological place within Gotham City. That there's like history and there's importance to it. It's not just a set piece. There's actual like something very important about this place. And so it's Batman's there, and he gets basically dosed up on a bunch of LSD. And it's him trying to navigate his way through Arkham Asylum while he's hopped up on this LSD. And like making his way through there. And it's kind of like explores a lot of different, and it's like, we know how villains act outside of Arkham Asylum. We know what their villainous personas are like outside of Arkham Asylum. What are they like? And it's really more of like, what is a person like when they're at home? What is a person like when they're going through just like the day-to-day at-home life? And it kind of takes a piece of that, but it's twisted up by the hallucinogenics, and it's just it's very, very good. It's a good read. I don't think it's like a quote unquote like critical read. If you want to like read Batman and know Batman as comics, like this is one you should read. I don't think that's part of it, but if you really want to get into how fun and weird Batman as a genre of comic can get, that's definitely a good one. And also it played off a lot a lot of the vibes came off. When I say macabre, I mean that, but also the Black Glove saga of Batman, pre New 92 or pre New 52 era of some really good like conspiracy level, like deep Gotham conspiracy level stuff mixed with like some really like dark stuff that gets touched on. And I think the feeling I got from the Batman trailer was definitely like we're gonna get more of this kind of evocative emotion out of it, and Matt Reeves is I think the perfect person to do that. So I'm to say that I'm hyped is probably like understating it at this point.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch over to the game side of things.
Yes.
We had obviously the long-rumored and long-teased Gotham Knights finally unveiled, as well as the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game from Rocksteady.
That one, no, I don't want to talk about that one.
You don't care about that one?
That game, I'm just like so like the idea of like the like superheroes are bad guys. Like we're gonna do the Suicide Squad. They're bad guys, but you're like, but they're the good guy. Like no, I'm so
Okay.
like don't get me wrong. I loved Birds of Prey. I adore that film. I don't need or want for this Suicide Squad game.
I like honestly, I kind of don't care about either of these games really. Like after like they were cool enough trailers and all that stuff, but I'm like I don't know how invested or interested I'm in those stories, because one of the things that Rocksteady and WB Games in the Arkham games did really well was like the narrative of those characters. I love that. I feel like having a choose your own character kind of narrative always hurts narrative, and it always hurts the characters because they have to design something that works for all four of these flavors. And I just don't expect that to be as tight of a thing. Like the fact that both of them are being shown off and showcased as like co-op experiences over the single player experience just already has me like kind of ready to nope out. Like I appreciate that they are all going to be playable as single player stuff, but I'm just like I don't in the same way that like I don't give a shit about the story of Destiny. I know that like you as like
Yes.
Destiny diehard lore fan like love that stuff, but it's like none of that is interesting or compelling to me because I don't think any of it is told well in the game itself. I think you have to do way too much digging, way more than I'm interested in for it to be telling any kind of like interesting story within the game. And the thing that gets you on Destiny is like, hey, the shooting feels nice. It like the combat of the Arkham games feels great, but like has also been improved upon in so many other games since. And I'm like, if this just ends up being that, but with a different set of characters, I don't care all that much. I do want to give a shout out to Samoa Joe though for being cast as King Shark in the Suicide Squad game.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That's I saw that news breaking today. So shout out to him for getting to play that role because. He's a big gamer guy, and I hope he does well and has fun with that. I mean, like the trailers themselves were fine. That just like am not overly interested in either. And I talked about on last week's show. I've been watching the Harley Quinn show on HBO Max, which is fucking hilarious, and a great example of like. The Suicide Squad kind of idea of like bad guys being bad guys, but having like the way they say it, like they're villains, but they're still good people or whatever. Like they have lines where they're not going to kill innocent people or something like that. That's not what they're looking to do in at least in Harley Quinn, and I enjoy that mentality. I'm not in the camp of like. You can't tell a good story doing that, or I'm overseeing those kinds of stories. It's just I'm like the gameplay really just doesn't look like it's going to draw me in.
Was that even actual gameplay? I don't think they showed any actual.
I mean, no. In Suicide Squad, no, it was just a completely cinematic trailer. Yeah. But in Gotham Knights, they showed plenty of gameplay in that, and even that is just like, I don't know how invested I am in that kind of thing.
That's cool. I'm super invested into it. I loved that trailer. I loved what they were showing off. I don't think it's focused. Like, I think they wanted to show off that there's co-op. I don't think that, like, because I think there's four narratives in this game, depending. And I hear what you're saying about, like, choose your own
I mean,
character narratives don't ever fully flesh out like a single character narrative. But the fact that they're basically doing Battle for the Cowl but better, excites me. Like, this is
I
playing
mean,
into kind of like the idea of legacy of Batman, and I'm excited for it. I'm really pumped about it.
the example I maybe is that is a better example is like Borderlands. Like your character in Borderlands is never like the most interesting thing about Borderlands. You're like at least in like pre-sequel and in Borderlands 3, they finally had your character like throwing out quippy one-liners in response to a lot of things. But so much of that series has been like your character is just a move set and the story happens around you. I mean, to the extent that in Borderlands 3, you don't even exist in the cutscenes. Like, all the cutscenes happen and you just disappear. And it's like, what the hell? What? And that's kind of my fear of that kind of storytelling, is that, like, they can do interesting things, but how fleshed out or how, interesting are Nightwing and Red Hood and Robin and Batgirl going to be as characters. Also, the fact that that game exists outside of the Arkham universe, but Suicide Squad exists as a direct sequel to Arkham Knight. It's like, okay, that's weird, and like I don't know what WB Games is like, what they think they're getting by doing that. But yeah, I
Well,
don't
I
know.
think they finally get their own universe to play in. It's their own, like,
I, I,
like
I mean, I'm saying WB Games as the publisher, not WB Montreal versus Rocksteady. I'm saying I don't get why WB Games decided to make two Batman games at the same time, one in this universe and one outside of this universe. Like, why?
well,
It
because it's
just
not a
like,
Batman game.
I mean, yeah, neither of them are Batman games.
No, no, no,
They're
no.
both
Like,
they're both
there's
Batman games, but neither one is a
no, no,
Batman
no,
game.
no. Suicide Squad's not a Batman game. It's a Suicide Squad game.
I mean, it is in the Arkham verse.
Yeah, but I think this is so. I think this is two. This is a two-prong approach. One, the Arkham verse is going to finally be able to get outside of just Gotham City and Batman and tell more of a story about the world and all these different characters, which is why Rocksteady, I think, wants to do it. And then on the flip side, WB Montreal finally gets to have their own Bat universe to explore and create in, so they're not limiting themselves to another studio's vision of what this could be like. And I think they're taking a really cool approach to it by saying, hey, instead of it being like we're making another Batman game, we're gonna make a Bat Family game that is about it's about like, I think it's gonna be it has the possibility of being really cool storytelling about legacy. It's an action adventure. I'm sorry, an action RPG game. I'm excited about that aspect of it. I'm excited about, like, there's a lot about what we saw and what we found out from press releases afterwards that has me really stoked for this game. Suicide Squad, I guess I might be an outlier. I've had enough of the Arkhamverse. I thought Arkham Knight was a great note to end it on. I'm okay moving on past it. I think that there is still a lot that they can probably do with the universe, and I hope it does well. I hope, because I love Rocksteady games, but my focus and what my enjoyment is definitely looking like it's going to come from Arkham Knight. And any game where I get to play the Red Hood makes me happy. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I I can appreciate all that, and it's just as somebody who isn't as invested in DC, like taking Batman out of the Batman games is like, do I care that much? I kind of don't. Like, I hope they go well, but again, like, if it was a single player thing where I'm bouncing between those four characters and I'm getting to spend time with each of those characters, I'd be more interested in it. But the fact that it's being pitched as like co-op, or you're playing as one of these characters, but like another one of them is going to be your buddy as a bot, I'm just like, I don't know if that's going to do it for me.
I didn't pick up that.
I'll try and keep a note.
I thought it was just going to be solo. Yeah, they said it's either like you're solo or you team up with somebody.
No, I believe they are. I believe it's being I believe both of the games are being pitched in the same vein as Avengers, where like if you play single player, AI will be filling out your team.
Well, at the same time,
Or
I'm not.
your
Yeah.
partner in that game will be like an AI, because you can still switch between characters on the fly.
Okay.
Is one of the things that I saw about Gotham Knights in particular. So if you're playing single player, you might be controlling Robin, and then Red Hood is with you, and you can swap to play as Red Hood, in the middle of a fight or something like that.
I think that
I think
that
is
should be.
I think is what I
Yeah,
saw.
that should still be pretty okay because the Arkham games, the team up whenever you had like teamed up with Robin or Nightwing always like worked extremely well. So I wouldn't be surprised. Okay.
Yeah. Um, any quick thoughts on the Suicide Squad?
Film or
Yeah, they showed off the costumes and the casting, basically, like who all these people are, in a kind of like in a little splash thing, showing off the costume designs, but also then the little behind the scenes featurette.
Yeah. People are gonna die. I'm excited about that. There's no way you
Yeah.
have a cast this big and you're gonna keep all of them.
Oh yeah, I mean
yeah.
there's definitely a lot of them are cannon fodder.
Yeah. Like they're so. I'm very very excited to see how this plays out because this feels like the setup and the concept is essentially the Suicide Squad is basically like it looks like they're like either preventing or trying to prevent or causing a coup d'état in a Central American country, and they are going nuts with it. This apparently the special effects budget is more than like either of the Guardians films or Avengers or anything like that Marvel's done. So it's gonna be nuts, and James Gunn is the perfect person to like let something like that go nuts. I personally, I'm very stoked for it, just because I've been a fan of James Gunn since I forgot what the film is. It's with Rainn Wilson. I think it's Super, is what it's called. Um, it's this he comes from a place of making art house like grindhouse films, and he's been able to bring a lot of that aesthetic to the big blockbusters that he's made so far. And I think he's just done an amazing job of that. I like that he like the fact that this came out of a really like not like it came out of like a really bum situation of where he was out from Marvel, and so DC snapped him up to do this film, and then whatever the powers that be at Marvel decided to like be like, well, that was like a decade ago. Um, and like and
Yeah.
you like and if you like look at the kind of like he definitely fit a different kind of like he was not like here's the thing, when they announced James Gunn as the director for Guardians of the Galaxy, I was shocked because he has made some like really like dark messed up stuff, and so for his Twitter from that era being filled with dark messed up stuff doesn't surprise me. For people who didn't know about that, it was probably pretty shocking.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that it's great that he like. It's nice that things have worked out for James Gunn, where he basically gets to be somebody who gets to play in both DC and Marvel,
Exactly. Yeah.
which I think is great. Here's the thing: if you guys like, if they just want to do a talent share, do it. Like that'd be great. Like why not?
That's one of the kind of funny, in one of their like reactions, they were talking about like the inevitable point when Disney buys DC and we end up getting down the line Marvel versus DC in films and stuff like that.
First off, that comic
It's like,
series is not very good, but it's pretty entertaining.
I mean, yeah, no, I especially given like all the, I mean, it's like the level of like litigiousness, I'm sure, that went into that as went into Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where certain characters have to have equal screen time or whatever, or this person can come on second but they have to have the first line or something like shit like that. I'm sure would happen if it was made now, in a Marvel versus DC kind of thing. But when just Disney monopolizes and eats up everything because our government doesn't give a shit about anti-monopolization shit anymore. It will be fascinating to see how those stories get told You know, assuming it all happens. Who knows if it actually would. But that was definitely something I've been thinking about, is like, and then you could have people like James Gunn, who have gotten to play in both, just really have fun and be like, all right, now we're going to set the action figures against each other and go extra nuts.
I just realized if Disney buys Warner Brothers and DC, that is basically like a long-term Machiavellian level goal of Walt Disney. For people who don't know, Walt Disney hated the Warner Brothers, and the Warner Brothers hated Walt Disney. Just because like they competed against each other to the point where they wanted to run each other out of Hollywood. And like that was at the time and period of it. So like if Disney bought WB, that would just be what a final what a dark fucked up way to end that rivalry. Just my company outgrew any possible estimation of wealth, and is now just bought up my former rivals.
Yeah.
In the end, Disney is Walt Disney's only true child.
I mean,
that's not true.
That's dark.
Yeah,
but,
I meant it to be dark and messed up. So
yeah,
not true. He has children that one of which has definitely pointed out that he was racist and a man of his times, which also means in today's standards, not a great person.
Yeah. Well, that's DC FanDome. Unless there's any other thoughts or anything you want to share.
Pete Davidson's in Suicide Squad, and you just know he's going to get murked early on.
Yeah, I mean that definitely feels right.
Same thing with Nathan Fillion. You know he's getting murked early too.
I feel like Nathan Fillion, Pete Davidson, Michael Rooker. I feel like James Gunn is just, especially with how much crap they were giving Michael Rooker in the panel, I feel like he's just set up and being brought in as his friend to be sacrificed.
Also, Ryan Gunn as Weasel.
Yeah, Sean Gunn.
Yeah, sorry, Sean Gunn as Weasel.
Yep.
What a
just a complete typecasting of oh, you played Rocket, well now you can play Weasel. Yeah. Well, that's DC FanDome. Tell us a little bit about the Worthy Kids / Big Top Burger.
Yeah.
Is a thing that I am unfamiliar with entirely, but you were tweeting about and talking about a little bit before we started recording.
So Big Top Burger is a animated short made in Blender by Worthy Kids, who I don't know. I've not done enough internal research to know if it's one person or if it's multiple people who animate it, but what I can tell you is that it's awesome. It is each episode is 2 to 3 minutes long, and they've just wrapped season 1. It's all compiled into a 12-minute video, so there's only one intro and one outro, which usually takes roughly anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute of time anyway. And what it does is it tells a very fun story of a food truck that is circus themed, or not circus themed, clown themed, and it is driven by and owned by a guy named Steve, who is it's just fun. And there's a great cast of of the cooks that he works with, and it's basically a day in the life of this food truck that's Big Top Burger. And it is flavors of absurdism mixed with just visual flair and really fun, goofy dialogue that is just great. If you have 12 minutes of your day, watch it. I do not believe you'll regret it. It's there's a very subtle brilliance to it, in my opinion. That I don't want to overhype it to the point where you watch and you're well, that was dumb, but because that could easily happen, because of the levels of absurdism that are in it. But it is please watch it. That's all I'll say. I'll put it out there. Big Top Burger. People who are fans of Sun-Won Cho, who is a voice actor and former Vine star. ProZD, He voices a character in one of the episodes. Uh, so like, and that's actually how I found out because he was like tweeting it out that he was on the show, and I watched it back in June, and I was just blown away by it. So, um, just fun. It's fun, silly fun, and it's good. Check it out.
Cool. One of the things I have brought to the table today is I finished my time with Spiritfarer last
Yes,
night.
tell me about it.
So Spiritfarer, for those that don't know, is a little sim management kind of game that got stealth released on I think Tuesday this last week. It was part of the Nintendo World thing, but it came out on pretty much all platforms. Nintendo. I played it on PlayStation. I think it's also part of Game Pass. This is something
It is, yes.
I first played at PAX West last year, about this time last year. Very beautiful hand-drawn art style, and I think it was introduced in an Xbox presentation at some point. Indie game from Thunder Lotus Studios, and yeah, hand-drawn art style. You basically play the farrier of the dead. You are tasked with kind of being the ferryman. And you are actually a ferry woman named Stella, and you have a cat named Daffodil. And I think you can co-op the game, where I think you can have one person playing as Stella and one person playing as Daffodil, but single player I only played as Stella. But yeah, you basically you get a boat, and you can upgrade and improve the boat and get it's almost Metroidvania-esque in that like you'll have kind of this ocean map that you can kind of navigate, but parts to the north of the map will be blocked off by like a ridge of ice, so you can't get past that section until you have the upgrade for your boat that lets you kind of cut through the ice. Or there's like a foggy area that you can't get through until you get like the lamps on your on the bow of your boat and stuff. But you go around kind of island to island or location to location, kind of collecting resources. Like you can cut down wood, you can mine ore, you can pick berries, and you're also picking up spirits that you then kind of house and feed and talk to, and you'll do like little side quests for them to kind of help ferry them through, and like they come to terms with the fact that they've passed or whatever and are ready to move on to the afterlife or whatever the case may be. And so while you're doing that, you're also building up their living quarters on your boat, or you're building like a field on your boat that you can plant seeds in and grow crops and stuff to feed them, or to cook new meals for them that you can kind of have in your kitchen or something like that. You can kind of combine items to make new recipes and stuff like that. And each person has different likes and dislikes that'll affect their mood and how much they like you. If they like you a lot, they might give you like special little rewards like seeds or stuff you can sell. Very like it is a weird mix of I think like it's a Harvest Moon-esque kind of like Story of Seasons-esque kind of game in that you basically have and that's I think how they pitched it to me, like when they like grabbed me on the floor at PAX West, was like, do you like Harvest Moon? This is a game for you. And it was, as somebody who had seen like the little narrative trailer out there at first that was like, yeah, you're gonna take care of these people and help ferry them to the afterlife. I didn't at all piece together that like, oh, you're also growing crops and watering and cutting plants and stuff like that. But that's in the game. There's a lot of platforming kind of stuff as well. And yeah, it's just in terms of like the character stories, like each character kind of has their own, little narrative that they follow. And there's just a ton of different characters. One that really, really resonated with me, especially just given events from earlier this year, was one of the people who kind of joins in your boat. Her memory starts like failing as you're talking to her, and she stops remembering who you are and starts thinking you're her daughter. And so she starts calling you Anna, her daughter's name, and stuff like that. And basically one of the quests is even like, change your outfit to Anna's beach outfit or something like that, and wear the hat that Anna wore to help, just put this person at comfort, make them comfortable. And when you take them to the Ever door, which is when you're basically ready to ferry them off, they depart your boat, and move on, become a beautiful constellation in the sky kind of thing is how it's visually represented. It was like, that was the one that really got me emotional and just suddenly tearing up and crying because my grandmother, who passed away earlier this year, had, suffered from failing memory for the last, number of years beforehand. So it was very like cathartic, I guess, being there with this character at the end, in a way that I couldn't connect with my grandmother at the end of her life because of circumstances and everything, and so being able to like help this person across that threshold like gave me a weird sense of closure in my own life, as well. And was just a very powerful experience, and there's a lot of them. The stories differ for each of the characters, and some of them are certainly more jovial and more fun, and some of them are more in like a more heartbreaking nature like that. But overall, like it is my kind of comfort food game, told with a very kind of melancholic kind of voice to it, but not in a way that ever feels like overly depressing. Like everything I'm doing is to help these people along in their journey, and so there's just a nice sense of fulfillment in that. So I really highly recommend the game, especially if you're a fan of kind of the sim type of games. Your Harvest Moons, even like Sim Tower a little bit, I guess, is kind of how like I got some vibes on that, just based on how you kind of build out your boat. Because you can basically, like, there's no rhyme or reason. Just like every building takes up a certain footprint, and you can put them anywhere just as long as you don't have things overlapping and you have the space for it. So like I, would stack up like sheep corrals or something. So I had like all of my sheeps in a row, and I could just kind of like jump up kind of the level to feed them and shear them. And then they grow their fleece back in a couple days, and I can shear them again. And you can build kind of like little things that'll help you traverse around the boat when you start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's just that much more room to cover. A lot of the resources you'll get through like just random little mini games where kind of the screen will zoom out and it'll be like shooting stars coming down and like pelting the boat, and you have to like go to where they landed and like pick up the resources that dropped onto your boat. And so the bigger your boat gets, obviously the more ground you have to cover, but fortunately they start giving you like abilities like dash or double jump, or you can kind of like float around your boat and stuff. So just a lot of fun, very, very comfortable comfort food kind of game. I really, really enjoyed it. Really strongly recommend it. Just a great little indie title that is a huge breath of fresh air, and something that I'd been keeping my eye on since playing it back at West. So when it kind of stealth released this year, I was like, this week, I immediately was like, yep, picking that up. Picked it up on Switch before I realized it was not just a like Switch early access. So I was like, well, okay, I'm gonna actually play it on PlayStation. So that's where I ended up. So I basically bought it twice, but also if you want to play it on Xbox, it is on Game Pass. So any questions or anything for me there, Cam?
So I played a slice of it at PAX East earlier this year before the world shut down, and like it's weird that like the year started with Australia on literal fire, and then the figurative fire like encompassed the world, but that happened. So before I played it at PAX East 2020. PAX East 2020 was like an emotional rocking for me for some of these games.
There was that. You had the Welcome to Oak, right?
Welcome to
Is
Elk,
that the
yeah.
one? Well, Elk. Elk, not
Yeah,
Oak.
welcome to Elk. There was like just at
Were you
yeah.
one of the ones that had played Raji?
I played Raji as well, which was excellent,
Yeah,
beautiful.
because that one came out. I think yeah, that's right. Because you wrote like a little preview piece on Raji too, right?
No,
And they
Logan wrote the
no
preview
no
piece. I did. I
right
We did
okay
like a short audio like piece on it where we both
right
talked about it. Um,
there you go.
we were both able to play it.
They reshared that this week, so I saw that pop back up because that was another game that Stealth released this week that I picked up. I haven't had time to sit down with it
No,
yet, but
there's that game,
um,
Spiritfarer. There's quite a few games that I'm like cool. I love that they stealth released right after I lost my job, and I can't
yeah,
play them.
womp womp.
It's fine. Like these will be great games for me to pick up a little bit later and play through. I don't think I'm in an emotional place where I could play Spiritfarer right now because the moment you mentioned, you're like, oh, this character has memory problems, and I'm like, oh shoot, that's like Trevor's gonna be talking about his grandma, and then I thought to
Yeah.
myself, huh, like usually when I'm in an like I'm in a like normally when something like this happens, like I've lost my job recently, but it's easy. Like I'm emotionally vulnerable in a few ways, and one of which is definitely like I recall and remember people that aren't here anymore. Like
Hmm.
like my mom and uh, it's like thinking about that. I'm like I'm really not in an emotional place right now where I could play Spiritfarer, and probably not just like
Hmm.
openly weep. So
Yeah, the
yeah,
one of the like as a weird. I mean, it was a very beautiful thing in fitting with the theme of the game. The credits when the credits start to roll, they started with a in loving memory of kind of like real of
oh geez,
family and friends of clearly the people who made the game, with kind of like those who they had lost, and the people that clearly had inspired some of these stories, it seems. And
yeah,
so it was a very like it was just another like this was a game unlike anything I've played because of elements of like that, where it's like you never see that in a game.
yeah.
Starting with like a crawl of 20 or so names of like these are people that we've lost and we care about and that were heavily influenced this game enough that we want to celebrate them right here before we even celebrate
Yeah,
ourselves.
Thunder
Um,
Lotus is that kind
yeah.
of studio. I first met a few folks from Thunder Lotus, particularly one person at PSX 2016. They were showing off
Mm.
Sundered, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Wow, this game is really amazing." I literally dragged. Did I drag you to it? I'm pretty like I dragged like a handful of people over to that game over the course of it.
Not me. I'd heard about Sundered, and I think I have it. I just never actually sat down and played it,
Yeah,
really.
it's a great game. Like it's sincerely like a really great game. Totally different than Spiritfarer, which is why I'm like, wait a minute, Thunder Lotus is making this game? Like this is such a departure, and then you kind of see there's a beauty to Thunder Lotus's approach to game creation that I think is very unique and very special. In that they always come from, even if the focus of the game is not to be hitting emotional beats, like Sunder does not, like it's not crafted that way. But what Sunder does is it hits on like certain gameplay beats and certain gameplay moments that are really really good and really really cool. And to see them transfer that same kind of game design principle over to Spiritfarer from the slice that I played was awesome. To see them hitting like they know how to like give a game an oomph, to give moments in when you're playing like a real solid like feeling of weight and gravity to it. Um, like I'll never forget when the first time I fought against a boss in Sundered. The bosses in Sundered are absolutely nuts. They are like they range from like an eldritch like armored vehicle that's trying to run you over and like kill you, to like this statue of like a like long forgotten deity coming to life and trying to destroy you. Um, it's brilliant. They're brilliantly creative people over at Thunder Lotus, and so to hear and see Spiritfarer being doing like some people are talking about it. It looks like it's definitely doing well on that aspect of it. I hope it does extremely well because this is a studio that I think is very special. Um, and I'm very much looking forward to what they continue to do. So I'm looking forward to when I finally do pick up and get the opportunity to play Spiritfarer.
Yeah, it was really special. Definitely something like I will be very open to like revisiting and just becoming like a new comfort food kind of
Oh yeah,
I want
yeah.
to
Well, when
say
I played the farming aspects of Spiritfarer, I did
mm-hmm,
not know that was going to be a part of the game.
right,
The fishing
yeah,
part, I was not expecting. The fact
yeah,
that like that frog dude's your uncle, and it's just
mm-hmm,
it's you hang out with your uncle on his on your guys' boat as you ferry people like to the next part of their life, and I'm like that's so cool. Like it's just such a simple story setup that is just perfect balance of like fairy tale story like mythology storytelling that's just done so well. And but the aspect of farming and stuff like that and building out rooms and stuff that they showed off in the demo at PAX East was awesome, and so I'm very much looking forward to
yeah.
that aspect of it.
Yeah, there was I want to say Valhalla. I think was like Nabashin would describe that as like a hot chocolate kind of game, hot cocoa
Yeah,
kind of game.
you
Like
get a
this
mug of
is
hot cocoa and you just curl up next to that game and you get to play it.
yeah, this is very much like that kind of game for me.
Nice.
Just like a Story of Seasons or a Harvest Moon or something like that, or Stardew Valley. Yeah, lots of just really nice kind of things there in the game, and there are definitely a few things that I will be eager to like. I I did run into some issues with the game, like some glitches and stuff that I was encountering. That I know they're like just from following that they're constantly kind of keeping an eye on and trying to patch and figure out better ways. Like one of the at least one or maybe even two of the quest lines that I had like just didn't like they stopped. They didn't like pick up, and I think it was because I had already let so many people of my boat go by the end that it was like there was one quest that was basically like, hey, I'm gonna put on a play, so invite as many people as you want, and I only had one other person on my boat at the time,
Oh, that
um,
sucks.
uh, and so like so so he goes and puts on the play, and then like it's like, hey, go get the feedback, what everybody think. And so I go talk to the one other person, and then like the quest just never went anywhere else from there. It was like it was constantly showing up in like my quest log of like get feedback, and then like it would be like, here's the title of the thing, here's your objective, and then here's like some flavor text to like tell you what the objective means, what you're supposed to do. And it was just like one of them was just like dot dot dot, and I was like, that doesn't mean any what is and like in game week passed or something like that, and just nothing happened. So just I was like, I'm pretty sure this quest line just glitched and I can't finish it now. But fortunately, and it may have been because I had already gotten the quest that I could finish the game if I wanted to, because like you only need to send so many people off to your off to the Everdoor before you get invited to end the game. And it doesn't give you a like, it isn't a Harvest Moon in that, once you beat the story, you can keep playing. It is this is the end of the game. You can like reload a save before that, but like that will always end your game kind of thing. It's like, okay, it's an interesting approach, and I look forward to seeing if they decide to add in like a new game plus mode or something like that. Could be interesting and compelling, but yeah, it's definitely something that I will be open to revisiting again in the future sometime, because it's just a very heartwarming, comfortable kind of game, and gave me some nice little catharsis. It also especially was like a nice thing to pull me away from Fall Guys, as I've become increasingly frustrated with Fall Guys, and it has fallen off its pedestal as I have struggled and failed to get the stupid 5 wins in a row trophy. And I've just kind of reached the point where I'm like, fuck it. Actively going for that trophy is making me hate that game more, so I need to not do that for my own enjoyment. So this was a nice game that served as an alternate like when I would get frustrated with Fall Guys, I would just be like, all right, screw this, I'm done with Fall Guys. I'm gonna go boot up Spiritfarer and just grow some plants and help some people be dead. So yeah, those are my Spiritfarer thoughts. Let's throw it back over to you. What else do you want to try and tackle here, Cam? You got a few other games still on your list.
Let me take a look at the list here.
You got Overwatch League, Destiny 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Story of Seasons, and Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and hit up our Overwatch League real quick. For those of you who don't know, this weekend what is going to be the last season of the regular season for Overwatch League, Season 3. It's in the books. It's been... Man, this was supposed to be like a season of proving for the at-home esports model, and COVID really wrecked that shit. Like these were going to be like these really massive events that were going to be kind of like introducing people and getting people to understand kind of like what it was like, what it means for a city to have a team that that is an active team that plays and lives in your city. And it would have been so cool to like have that happen over the course of the year. It unfortunately just is never going, like that just didn't happen. Let's all cross our fingers that Season 4 they'll be able to get that back up and running. But this has definitely been like a trying time for an esports league that is trying to create an in-person experience. COVID-19 could not have happened at a worse time for them. That being said, I think that there has been a phenomenal job by so many people. I'm specifically thinking of the New York Excelsior. I'm thinking of the team and like the org behind them, because the players were in Korea on break. Well, most of them were. Some of them were still in the United States. But instead of saying, well, okay, let's pull people from South Korea where they are like containing it, we're seeing some problems here. So they moved the entire org to South Korea and like put them there. Everybody got through quarantine, etc., and like they're fine now. But like the effort that both London Spitfires and the New York Excelsior did to take care of their players, like letting players be in Korea because they're Korean, and like that way they are closer to their families and their friends who, it's such a great thing that they did. And it was difficult for them too, because the Asian Pacific region turned out to be a hardcore grind fest for really tough, awesome teams this year, which is great to see. Great Overwatch got played this season, for sure. They also introduced a lot of new different things, like the hero pool mechanics and whatnot. But it's been a rough season for a lot of teams, for a lot of players. But there's a lot of bright spots to look back on throughout the season, and there is a lot of hope for next season. So, it's my real hope and sincere desire is to see this pandemic addressed and taken care of before next season starts. I don't know how realistic that is, but that is a deep, deep wish of mine, because I really want to see a league like this succeed, because I think that it is so great that there is a core identity to the team and the organization in the locations that they're based out of, that I think could really change how esports is viewed by the mainstream, by like people overall, because it doesn't have to be Team F1 Fnatic FaZe Clan, like Bromeo 6 or whatever, like some of these weird teams get called. It is like, this is the team from Chicago, this is the team from New York, this is the team from LA, and like this is the team from London, South Korea, or Seoul, South Korea. You can have that, and I think that it's such an amazing thing to help bring people into esports with.
Yeah, it's always interesting, because I remember getting in this debate years ago, because the Arizona Theater Company would notoriously cast like out of state talent, And I would rail against them for that. And I would say, like, what the, like, you're the Arizona Theater Company. Stop going to New York for your talent and casting from New York, or doing like co-productions with Seattle, which just bring in like the cast that Seattle has, and then like, you know, you're not giving opportunities to Arizona actors. And I remember the artistic director at the time basically like argued against that mentality with like, well, the Cardinals aren't made up of like a bunch of Phoenix natives or something like that. And it's like, well, like that's a very facetious argument because the sports are bringing in significantly more revenue to the state than you are. Also, you're a fucking nonprofit, so shut the hell up and support your own damn community. And so it has reminded me of that in the same vein of like, I don't know necessarily why a city having an esports team has a significant identity, even when you're even mentioning like that, you know, most of New York Excelsior was Korean.
All the players are are Korean.
So yeah, it's like, how does that being, you know, a New York based team, is that just pulling in some of the wrong lessons from like the tribalism of, you know, competitive sports?
No, I don't know about that. What I will say is, if there's one thing to look at, it's especially with New York, it's how the fans of Overwatch in New York took to the team and took to the players, and how the players took to like New York City. New York City is it's cool because New York City has become such a core identity to the players on the team. There was when they first started putting together like stuff, a lot of the players were saying the same thing. Like it's cool to represent. Like they're like, it's this really amazing thing that you get to represent like one of the like greatest cities on the planet. It's a place that everybody knows about.
Instead of Monster Energy drink,
yeah,
or whatever. I get that.
And the thing about it is like Excelsior is just such a like, you know, if I were like, oh yeah, the Excelsior, it's like cool. But if I say, well, New York or New York Excelsior or NYXL, like you're like, oh, that has some recognition to it. Versus if I tell you, like, Trevor, can you tell me the difference between like the FaZe
Clan and 100
yes.
Thieves? No, I cannot.
Say that. That's a great. Yeah, what's the difference?
I cannot at all. No clue. No idea who's on either of those. But I also don't know who's on any of the I don't know who's on the New York teams or the San Antonio. No,
Dallas Fuel.
Dallas something.
Dallas Fuel Burn Blue. They have had a rough season.
Yeah. I know some of the team names, but I know. I mean, especially as again super outsider myself. Like it's all. Like I can appreciate that having the teams based out of the city fits more of the like sports model that like the world is accustomed to, versus the, you know, the competitive esports team or scene that was like, okay, these are the team that are FaZe Clan, these are the 100 Thieves people, these are the X, Y, and Z, whatever the other kind of groups are that are more built around branded ideas than like any kind of like location. But at the same time, the point I go back to is like, but there's no real like it just like in any sports, you know, people are going to get traded from one team to another, so they don't really have any loyalty to the city that they, you know, that they're based out of or whatever. Like it's not, you know, New York players are playing for the New York Excelsior. It is like the best players they can get are playing for the New York Excelsior regardless of where they're from. So it's one of the things I just never, especially growing up here in Arizona, where I just realized very early on that you can't really be proud of the Phoenix based sports teams or the Arizona teams, just because we aren't great at a lot of things. So like growing up with the Cardinals, it was like, yeah, I guess I'm by default a Cardinals fan just because I live here, but they're not good, so I don't want to be a fan of them.
The Cardinals used to play in the college stadium.
Exactly. Like yes. And the 1 year they made it to the Super Bowl, it was like they made it with the worst record ever. The 1 year the Diamondbacks won the World Series, it was the year that nobody wanted them to because they beat New York
They beat.
in November of 2001. So we were the bad guys, of course. The one time everybody could get behind the Yankees, we dicked them over. So like, yeah, I just growing up out here, and like the most I ever got like into sports was like early, like
Also,
seven or
the
8 year old Trevor
yeah.
play, like when the Suns were playing the Bulls in the NBA Finals. Like I was really into basketball that season, and probably like a season or two
That was a
after.
great season of basketball.
And yeah, and so I love that, and that was when I could feel like proud to be, like a Phoenix, kid. But like at the same time, I'm just like it doesn't make any sense, especially given how a lot of those like owners and stuff exploit that mob mentality to milk as much money as they can out of those cities while bearing no loyalty to giving back to the cities. Like there's a great John Oliver thing on that, so I don't need to dive down that rabbit hole, but it's just one of those things I think about in the terms of like, is that a lesson that like the esports scene should be taking, or are they going to run into the same kind of like pain points and like, oh, the New York's not making enough money for them anymore, so they're going to sell them off and become the Orlando Excelsior or something like that, and there, oh, great, cool. Now all those New York fans feel betrayed by their team.
There's an entire team called the Florida Mayhem, so they own the entire territory of Florida.
I mean, they do now. But how many teams are there in California? So, haha.
3.
It'll become the Tallahassee Mayhem and the Orlando Excelsior, and you'll have to suck it up because your team will no longer love you as much as you love them, Cameron.
Like all things from New York, they retire in Florida.
There you go. All right.
So Overwatch League.
Anything? Any final thoughts on Overwatch League?
Yeah, I know Excelsior aren't going to win the finals. It'll probably be the Shanghai Dragons. They are, which is so strange to be saying because, Trevor, I don't know if you know this. The Shanghai Dragons hold the worst losing record.
I guarantee you, I don't know.
Yeah,
I guarantee
they
I
hold
don't
the worst
know
losing record in all of sports history. They went 0-42. They lost 42 consecutive games.
Bravo.
Yeah, they are now in season 2. They made a strong turnaround, and when they had issues with some of their players, like their visas not going through, so they made some very smart trades and picked up some really good people, and then over the course between season 2 and 3 made some very good moves, very smart trades, and have basically created a incredible roster of players that is just dominant. Just absolutely dominant. Unless you're playing against the Chengdu Hunters, which that happens with everybody with Chengdu Hunters. You can't put Chengdu Hunters in a box. They will break out of it, courtesy of the God Ball Among. That means nothing to you. Don't worry. That's very specifically to people who watch Overwatch League. All
right, Zyger, that was the moment just for you.
Just for you, Zyger. Thank you.
So
it's a really cool turnaround story. People who were fans of Shanghai Dragons in season 1, I'm not a big fan of Shanghai Dragons, but when a team is getting beaten down to the point where they're 0-42, we all celebrated that win, the first win, everybody did. Because you just see these people, they tried so hard, they weren't bad players, things weren't coming together. And it was tough to see, and then finally things came together. They got the right parts, got the right players, and found a lot of good success. And now they are the most dominant. They're probably the most dominant team in the world. We'll see. Because of the way that COVID kind of screwed everything up, they had to separate the Asian Pacific division from the North American division. So they've just kind of those divisions didn't exist prior to season 3. They do now because of COVID restrictions. So I'm looking forward to that changing back between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. Yeah, it's great. It's great to see them. They'll probably win it out. If not them, perhaps Florida Mayhem or San Francisco Shock. Anybody who thinks the Philadelphia Fusion are going to take it are are full of delusions. Um, the day Chipsa has is crowned an Overwatch League champion is the day that it's officially over for the Overwatch League. Um, I say as Florida or as Philadelphia might just win it. Anyway, um, I digress. So that's the end of that. So looking forward to the finals that are the play-ins and playoffs and finals that are going to be happening in September.
Okay, let's move over to Destiny 2.
Destiny 2's in the current Moments of Triumph, Season of Triumph cycle of new expansions coming out in a couple of months. So they're doing this long-term thing where you basically get to do stuff to unlock cool armor, etc. Basically basic Destiny 2 stuff. That's just what's going on right now. I've dedicated a lot of time recently in the last few days to doing it, and it's been good. Destiny 2 continues to be Destiny 2.
I hopped back in a week or so back, played for a couple hours, and just was incredibly frustrated by my experience.
Really?
Coming back to that game because so much of it has changed. I went to, is it Io? Whatever the water planet is.
That's Titan.
Titan. I went there to do some daily or something like that. I don't know what it was. And I was just getting one hit killed by whatever random public shit was going on there. And it was infuriating that whatever, because obviously coming back into it where it was I was at power level 750, something like that, compared to, end games up in the 4 digits at this point. And so yeah, it was just
You're getting one-shotted by...
I was getting one-shotted by just random... they're not the darkness. They're the
Hive?
I don't know. No, not the Hive. The black and the shadowy ones that can be any of the
Taken.
other factions, really. Yeah, the Taken. There we go. Yeah, some fucking public event came in and just shit was one hit killing me, and I was just like, this is not fun. What the hell? And I tried going around doing a couple other random things. I went to there was a new zone that I was in, the Eastern European or something like that. Trying to do something on that, and yeah, it was just not a fun experience. It was incredibly frustrating, and I was overwhelmed by just all the newness to it, how much that game has changed since I really dove into it back in early days.
Well, yeah, because there's been so much that's changed in the game since you stopped playing.
Exactly, and I felt bombarded by menus and screens telling me to buy shit, and I was like, fuck you, I don't want to buy the season pass, I don't want to buy silver, I don't want to buy the Beyond Light expansion, I just want to hop in and see what the game is like right now. And then yeah, just as of recording, I saw, I think just this morning, I was reading an article that was listing out, here's all the things that are being vaulted, and I was like, well, yeah, that's seeing everything listed out versus when we talked about it a few weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory behind it and stuff, it's I paid for all that shit, and you are now taking all that shit away from me. And it's frustrating if I wanted to go back and replay the Red War campaign or something, that is just entirely being gone. The Leviathan is just being completely vaulted. It's wow, yeah, that's probably going to be the nail in the coffin, and I'm just not going to come back to that game. I don't think it is absolutely a game that has left me behind, and it's frustrating given how many hours I put into it. Shout out to the people that are that you that stick up with it enough to be enjoying kind of the constant end game grind and stuff. But I just there's I feel like the 500 hours that I put in has not been rewarded, or is being less than the 500 hours I put in is being taken away. And that's incredibly infuriating to me. So I'm pretty over Destiny at this point, and I don't see anything really bringing me back in. because of just that experience of like trying to hop back in and being just beat to hell and being overwhelmed by a whole bunch of stuff that just is completely unfamiliar and completely foreign to me. It just wasn't a fun experience. Like I even like when it dropped me into the tower, I was like, I don't even know where the hell I am, and I had to like climb out of like the bowels of the tower or wherever it dropped me.
Oh, you did you
And it
you
was just
landed
like,
in the second landing zone.
yeah, I guess. I mean, it took me into, I don't know what it would have been, but it was definitely some like some expansion that I hadn't played. Like it showed the cutscene for that, and it like wouldn't let me like. I mean, I could skip out of it, but like it definitely like it took the reins on here. Like, you're welcome back. Here's where we're dropping you, and here's now go talk to all these people or whatever. And I was just like, I don't know where the hell I am. Like, none of this looks familiar to me. And so yeah, it was just it just wasn't a good experience, and it just compounded the feelings I've felt when I've tried to go back to Destiny since, really, like my falling off, after everybody else did in the beginning. Because yeah, like the things that they're kicking off are like Mercury and Mars, which I put so much damn time into because I stuck with those early expansions when the game was first and then was it the Forsaken or whatever, the first like major expansion that brought a lot of people back and gave you the midnight thing, right, or something. I don't remember the garden,
Oh yeah, so yeah,
like whatever it was that brought that back and brought a lot of people back. Like, I came back for that, and just felt immediately left behind in that one, and so I was just like, I bounced back off pretty quickly from
yeah.
that.
Honestly, I was
So I
surprised that
just,
you hopped
yeah.
back in outside of like doing that one thing where it was like, oh, we're all hopping in to see this thing happen, and then it actually not being that like impressive. Um,
Yeah, it was I was watching like our friends over at What's Good, and like Andrea was streaming or something like that, and so I was like, let me hop back in and see, if this still feels fun or anything like that. And like the shooting still feels fine, but so much of the rest of that did not feel like a fun experience. So yeah, it was frustrating. And I'm angry really at Destiny 2, and at like Bungie, how they catered so heavily to like one particular super small sect of their audience that I just can't imagine how Destiny is at all a welcoming experience to new players. Because like I mean, like, I was effectively a new player at this point, and it was just not at all fun to get back into. So I just I don't understand how their strategy, and how they can bring new people in. They seem to be just catering to an ever smaller audience, that like trying to keep people from jumping off to other games as service kinds of games or something like that. And it's just it clearly just didn't work for me. So
yeah, I don't know.
um,
Like that's
I'm
so.
glad you're having fun with
Yeah,
it
I
still.
mean, I don't know. It's like I was off Destiny 2 for like for a while. Like I think maybe definitely not as long as you, but like the there was an initial shock of like a bunch of new stuff all of a sudden. Even though I'd already played through Forsaken, and then even um, the current era of where it's at with the moon and everything. So with what's going on with all of that, I would have to say that the like I'm sad to hear that, but at the same time, there has been what they're doing. Like I don't like to hear you upset that they're vaulting content is interesting because um no I just found that interesting. I never didn't even really think about that before, especially since like and it's this is kind of the thing like base Destinies like it's pretty much free at this point. Like you can like even if it's not free, you can buy it for like a couple bucks. So it's interesting to think about that. Like remembering like not only that, but I also feel like hearing from like you talk about like you feel like time that you put in that game is not being rewarded. and it reminds me of like it's just it's a really interesting take on it.
I mean,
Yeah,
like, yeah, it was very much my first like MMO kind of
yeah,
experience, and I'm sure that that's like a much more common thing in MMOs of like, oh yeah, we're gonna get to a point where we're just not gonna keep that content alive and stuff. And it's like, okay, but also like I fucking paid for that, so like let me keep the thing I paid for. And so it has made me absolutely incredibly wary of like really wanting to hop into that experience ever again. Just I like I can appreciate evolving a game and like tweaking it and adjusting that stuff, but like when you start like removing that stuff, and obviously like I also have to temper this with the fact that I know I'm not actually buying the game. I know that all the EULA agreement that everybody just kind of clicks through at the beginning of every game these days is basically like, hey, you're not buying shit. You're licensing this, and we reserve the right to take this entire game away from you if we really want to. So I get that like they're full within their rights to do it. I just don't think it's and I also understand from a structural perspective of like, hey, these are the things that most people aren't playing, so we're gonna like sunset them to focus on other things. Like I get all of it. It's just seeing the Destiny 2 that I really played and invested that much time into is pretty much just going to be completely gone here in a couple months. Like that's disheartening. Like if I wanted to go back and like relive some of those memories or something like that, I'm just not going to even be able to. And it's a frustrating reality of the games as service kind of structure. In the same, like I don't know, because I haven't gone back. Like if I wanted to go back and play Destiny 1, could I even still do that right now, or have they just kind of like disabled really all of those servers as
no,
well? And
and
so it's
I
like, yeah, you couldn't do shit.
no, I think this is what it really comes down to is Destiny 1 is like you can still boot up Destiny 1 and play it. I'm almost entirely positive you can because I see people doing that all the time to do old raid runs. Um, but I also think that when it comes to a game like Destiny 2, like there comes a point where you have to say, okay, well this is where Destiny 2 is at. When we talk about introducing new content, where are we going to put it? Like where is this going to exist within not just the world itself, but rather like within the UI, within the server space. And
Yeah.
what they're talking about, I think, is like here's the thing. I haven't been to Mercury in who knows how long. I have to go to Mercury because I want to finish up a quest line there for Zavala with the this whole stuff, but I've hesitated because I don't like Mercury. Um, I will probably end up doing that before it's vaulted, but at the same time, to say, well, because when it comes to updates and things that have to happen across the board, the more places and locations you have, from what they've said, is it takes more people to keep that up to date. And rather than focus on that, they want to focus on new content, and so they're vaulting it for now. And then when they bring it back, they're going to be bringing it back in a like with a different kind of like effect to it. Like for example, the moon now is not the same moon that it was in Destiny 1. It's built the same way. It's the same kind of layout and format. But what's there and what's going on the moon is totally different. And so they say they wanted to give Mars and Mercury that same kind of treatment in future expansions. So I understand but I never thought about it this way. You're losing access to something that you paid for. And it's like that's something that is pretty interesting. Like I said, it's a unique take on it that I haven't heard anybody make before. That kind of applies to and here's the thing, like Destiny's and original games as a service. It is a founder of this genre. Is this like something that we'll be seeing in other games as they move into the same kind of territory? Um, I don't know. Like I think this is, huh? Sorry, you saying that really just kind of gears started ticking in my head, and I started thinking more about this.
Yeah. Well, that's Destiny 2.
Yep.
And shout out to the people who are excited for Beyond Light. I'm just not going to be one of you. And I'm pretty sure I'm done with it for the last time at this point. Cuz I just like I was legitimately so overwhelmed trying to come back
I'm
into it
surprised
and
you
then
keep,
just
like you keep trying to come back
beating up
into
against
it.
a wall. And it's again like it was I like wanted to see what it was like now, 2 years down the line or whatever, however long it's been since I played it.
Trevor,
And so, yeah, like I reinstalled it and everything because it was in part because there was like a Twitch plugin and in the What's Good stream or something, and I gifted some subs, and it was like, okay, pick up your shit from Amanda at the tower, and I was like, all right, well, I'll go do that. Let me let me like boot the thing up and see what that's like. And then yeah, just like it brought me into the game, took me into I don't remember which planet. It was the scenes and the missions where like clearly all of the pyramid ships were like showing up.
yeah, the arrival. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so like I got like forced into that before I like it was like you need to get out of here. The whoever it was like there's no power here or whatever. You gotta go. And then it kicked me back to the tower, and I was like, okay, no idea what the hell that was about. And then yeah, just like running around and trying to do like public events or something was just getting like punched against a wall and just not fun. And then yeah, just like every other screen being like, hey, here's a thing we're trying to sell you. Here's a thing we're trying to sell you. Come buy this thing. Come buy this thing. And I was like, I give me a reason to buy any of these things that isn't just you giving me pop-ups now. It was just an incredibly like unfamiliar experience. And I was just like, nope, none of this is appealing to me right now. So I bounced back
I'm just
out.
gonna say this, Trevor. Destiny 2 is your ex, and I know we all went to a party at your ex's house a little while back, and we thought it was going to be a bigger deal than it was, and it didn't end up being that big of a deal, and it was kind of like an overall like underwhelming experience. But like you gotta stop going back to her, man. Like
Clearly. Yeah.
You two are in
Clearly
two
didn't work out.
completely different places now. Like you got it. Like it's not working out, man. You just need to just you and Destiny 2 need to stay broken up at this point. Is like the feeling I'm getting, because you're just getting upset and angry and frustrated at how it's changed and how like all this stuff, and I'm like, man, this is like a bad relationship that you're in. Games as services are basically just relationships with video games at this point. And like I'm still on friendly terms with your ex, and like we have our own situation and like our own group that they're a part of, but like you stay away. Neither of you are healthy for each other.
Yeah, you guys can probably kick me from farm to tower at this point. I did see I'm still in that
Trevor,
clan.
I don't know if anybody has I don't know who has access to what in farm to tower anymore. They're like that guild, like that clan has been so like not used.
Yeah.
It's only used now to give us free loot after like doing enough during the week.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to Ghost of Tsushima. So I beat Ghost of Tsushima. I have to say I love that game.
Yeah. I know Logan's still chipping away at it, and so we'll eventually sit down, and the three of us will do like a spoiler cast on the game itself. I think last I talked to him, I think he'd really only finished the first act. And last I talked to you had just finished the second act. So
yeah, I finished the third act.
So yeah,
I beat the game.
Cool.
It is a goddamn that game is just like so good.
It's
so good.
It is a solid game, a game-ass game, and a very different game, obviously, than The Last of Us Part 2, which is the other big like Sony thing of the summer. And I've mentioned this to somebody when I was, I think, playing with them or something in Fall Guys or something like that, but it was like, of those two games, I will easily see myself jumping back into Ghost before I ever want to like sit back and replay Last of Us, just because it is a much more gamified game, and there's just much more to do. Like I put more time into Ghost, but I still think it's a way better paced experience than Last of Us. just as a weird, like, as an open world, like, there's just more to do in that game, and so there's always a thing I can go and do, or there's always a random encounter I can go and do a standoff or something
Yeah.
like that. Versus Last of Us has just had so much downtime in
Even
it.
if you don't want to do a standoff and you want to be like a little ninja dude and like shoot arrows at the people instead and murder them that way and then still rescue somebody, you can. There's just so many ways to play that game and approach situations, and it's just
Yep.
all of it's just so awesome. The ending I was not expecting that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but that is 100% like a Japanese samurai movie kind of way to try to end it, and it's just so good. Like it's just like this entire film. I played it in Kurosawa mode, so like the Japanese voice actors they have for it are all fantastic. Um, and like I am looking forward to maybe later this year or sometime next year replaying it with English voice cast and like in color. I'm very excited to do that in the future. It's
Mm-hmm.
just overall, especially since I see people post their pictures from it, and I will look at it and I will be like, I played such a different game than other people did in Kurosawa mode. Kurosawa mode is a
Yeah,
totally
I saw.
different way of playing it.
I want to say, I think our friend Jarrett Green tweeted out, or I feel like I saw him say something to the effect of like, I don't know why you would play this game in Kurosawa mode because it is such a beautiful game. And so that's it, like, yeah, we had. I guarantee you and I had very different experiences with that game, just because it's so vibrant and so colorful, that restricting it to the black and white thing feels like a fun novelty, like filter to throw in there. But like I can't imagine wanting to actually play the full game like that
Because I got to
myself.
play it an old like the appeal of it to me is I got to play what was essentially a fun and awesome samurai movie. Like I got to play it, and it had all the touchstones of like the visual touchstones. And once again, I'll reiterate, it's not necessarily like a black and white mode. It puts a like the gradient over the the camera for it gives off this black and white notion, but there's so many different like tones of color within that you're still able to tell that with that I was still like really just blown away by. Like they could have easily just been like, well, we'll make it black and white, but instead they layered the grays in different like by different uh like visibilities to the point where like they made sure that even if you didn't know what like you couldn't tell the like which color it was, you could tell that like on an outfit these were two different colors, or even if they were very similar, if they were the same color in different shades, there was still a difference in that gradient. And it was just such a really like it's very brilliant and very beautiful. And I'm very much looking forward though to having that alternative experience or the traditional experience that they were expecting to have out of that game. Kurosawa mode was
Hmm.
definitely made for people like me, samurai movie nerds who just like have dreamed of like an like you could. I never even dreamed of a game like this. I never could have dreamed that I would play through a game like this in like with the Kurosawa mode like that could exist. And the fact that I got it means like to me that alone says so much about like the real like I know this game was made by people like me, massive fans of these samurai movies who um, are just like just massive fans of this genre, massive fans of these directors and these actors, and it just shows so well, and it's so cool, and it because here's the thing: the cutscenes don't feel like video game cutscenes; they feel like scenes from an old Japanese movie, and I think that's where a lot of the appeal comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I like
Um,
I'm very much looking forward to playing it again in color. I have to say that the way that the game ended is just such a the ending is just really brilliant and very smart, and just the entire last act, the way that they because it's like okay, cool. So I went through Act Two, and I did the end of Act Two, and this is where things kind of ended up. Okay, well I kind of can see where things are going, and then Act Three basically kind of turns everything on its head. The environment's totally radically different from the earlier two, and the like going into and be like, okay, well, I need to find like I'm gonna have to enter this enemy camp, and then it being this massive enemy camp because the enemy's been here since the beginning of the invasion. They've just had more time because I haven't been here taking them out. And so you have these enormous camps in the third part of the game that are just so much fun to like go through and stealth. Like if you want to play that way, I enjoyed playing that way. And where I would like try to find the best way to get into the camp. I would do everything I could to just kind of like whittle my way through and just start taking people out, and it was just such a cool experience. Like the game is so good. The game is so unbelievably good, and like with the problems that I had with, it's funny because Last of Us Part 2 is the best is one, like I loved playing the game, like the actual gameplay of it. But the lack of true and this is a part of the problem. In the early parts of The Last of Us Part 2, they give you that level of that early Seattle area of it feeling and giving you like opportunity to choose where you're going, and it wasn't the same. Oh well, this looks like the place that I have to squeeze through. Oh, this has to, like the traditional Naughty Dog navigation. And I miss that for the rest of the game. Versus,
yeah, it was very much a like, and just like they had done in like Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy, like an early open world area that they just didn't ever circle back to.
Yeah. Well, the idea of like in Last of Us Part 2, you go through, and then if you choose to go through the bank, you get a cool shotgun early in the game, which is awesome. And it's not required; you can totally miss it. And like it's great. I loved that aspect of it. We've talked, like, if you want to hear more about my feelings on Last of Us Part 2, you can listen to the spoiler cast.
There's quite a lengthy spoiler cast out there for it.
What was it? 3 hours long?
We hit 3.5 at least. We neared 4 hours on that one. It's easily our longest piece of content so far.
It is an epic piece of content, but the game deserved it.
Yeah.
I did not walk away from that game feeling like it was a masterpiece. I don't like, and here's the thing. I personally feel like Ghost of Tsushima executes its vision with just brilliantly. It just does it so brilliantly that when I play through it in color and in English, I will that will be my determination to determine whether or not I actually can say, in my opinion, if this game is a masterpiece or not. I'm looking forward to that, like finding out that distinction. It's just like this game is. Is this a video game-ass video game? Yes. Is it weak because of that? No. It knows what it is.
Nope. It has a hell of a lot of cinematic flair behind it.
Just awesome.
Yeah. It's, I mean, like it we talked about it, I think, in the past, either when record with you and Frank or when I would record with Logan on it. It is easily the showiest Assassin's Creed game that's ever been made. The most flair behind it. It definitely has all of those like Assassin's Creed checkboxes behind it. But like they do so much more with how they tell the story visually than AC has ever done, in my opinion. That it absolutely like stands above and beyond everything else that they've done. So, yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, really good.
Yep.
And I look forward to when Logan finishes it, so we can all sit down and chat about it. Because I also definitely want to pick your brain on like how what you thought about some of the kind of side stories and how they wrapped up, as well as which ending you chose or whatever. But we'll do that.
I think the side stories are some of the strongest parts of that game.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there are some that like actually like really like are gut wrenching. Because this is a war-torn part of your country, and you're seeing it tear your homeland apart, and it's very interesting.
One of my favorite meta moments was realizing midway through the game, like already enjoying Lady Masako, and then realizing halfway through playing it that she is portrayed by Lauren Tom, who is Amy Wong from the Futurama series,
Oh, in
which is
English,
one of
that's
my
what
favorite
she. I
TV
was like,
shows of all
yeah.
times.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay,
Um,
cool. She's an amazing voice
so
actress.
yeah, and she does a great job as Lady Masako. And so like it just made me that much more invested in the character by the time we got to the kind of the end of that story.
And
And
her
so I
story,
just
like the beginning of her story alone is just
yeah.
brutal.
Yep. Well, let's dive into a game I can also speak to a little bit with you on. Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. I talked about that a few weeks ago myself. You mentioned you had picked it up back before you lost your job.
The day before I lost my job, I picked it up.
Hooray! Have you? How far have you gotten into it?
I'm on like day 12 or 13 of spring. I've not put a lot of time into it. Destiny 2 has taken up a lot of that time, but I've put Destiny 2 down for, unless I'm going to be raiding. I'm not going to be playing it very much. Outside, like I haven't put as much time into it as I'd like to, but I am very excited to be back in Mineral Town.
Yeah. Had you played you'd played the Game Boy Color version?
I had played the Game Boy Color version, but I'm much more familiar, as you know, because we've talked about it before. I'm much more familiar with the Back to Nature, like Back to Nature Mineral Town.
Yeah. And it's pretty much a wonderful blend of the two.
I think I love a lot of the like new characters. I love the new character designs for the other older characters. Like I'm like, man, like I can't wait to like see all these new ladies out there and like finding like a new person to like try this out with, because like it's been years since and then I saw Ellie. I was like, oh no.
I had the same thing with Karen. I was like, Karen got me again.
You just like you never forget your first waifu, man.
Yeah. I do. Yeah. They did expand in this one. You can have same-sex relationships as well.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll have heart icons for all the boys as well.
Oh no.
If you want to to after Rick or Kai.
Yeah. Right.
Or,
you listen. You listen to two worst dudes right up front. Rick the chicken, like don't get me wrong, I loved being Rick's friend because eventually you get him out of his like overprotective brother shell and into being like a kind of like an okay guy. Although but then Kai is just literally like the absolute worst. Kai is the worst. He's such a giant himbo.
I would in Back to Nature, I would have games where I would romance Potpourri just so Kai didn't like take her away at the second summer or whatever it was. Like, because if in that game on the PlayStation, if you like they would pair up and he would just like she would leave town, and it was like, well that sucks. It's just like a character that's just gone from the game.
She just runs off with them and like leaves her family high and dry, and they're like they miss her, and it's like.
And actually, Anne was probably the girl I would usually go with in Back to Nature, who is Ran in this version, I think, the basically innkeeper's daughter. But Karen was just always the easiest one because it's just like you could just get her bottles of wine and she would love you for that. They've changed it so it's not wine, it's like premium grape juice in this version. Like they've taken out like the alcoholic references.
Well, yeah, they
or
didn't
whatever.
make it
It's
for
like,
everybody.
all right, whatever. Exactly. You can even romance the Harvest Goddess or Kappa. But like you have to do very specific things if you want to romance one of them.
Hey, here's the thing. Kappa, I totally get because he's a homie. I don't know, like anybody who needs to hear that. Like Kappa was the homie. Throw in my
And he gives you that berry that reduces fatigue, so helps out.
After you give him cucumbers. And he doesn't even know it's you. He's like, you're just tossing cucumbers, and he goes, yo, who's tossing all these cucumbers? And oh, it's you, man? Cool, here's a berry. It's like, thanks, Kappa, man.
Yep.
You're my neighbor.
Yep.
who lives in this lake. Very cool.
Well, I hope you enjoy your time back with the Friends of Mineral
I
Town.
will. I've already
Um,
planted.
Certainly keep me up to date. Yeah, I was mentioning
I planted my first
before we
crops.
started recording. Nice. I'm up through. I think I'm in the second autumn. About halfway through there. I got detoured because Spiritfarer very much kind of like scratched that itch for a little while there. But now that I'm done with that, it'll probably make its way back into my rotation of games. Because like on my Switch right now, I'm actively playing Animal Crossing still, Friends of Mineral Town, and the Paper Mario Origami King, and I'm just kind of like rotating through those games here and there. In addition to Fall Guys and everything else that's just out. At some point, I want to maybe boot up my Xbox One and hop into Battletoads, just to see how much of a nightmare like that is. But yeah.
Listen, man, if you're not ready to deal with if you don't love Battletoads at its worst, you don't deserve Battletoads at its best, okay?
I mean, all Battletoads is Battletoads at its worst and best at the same time.
The quality of Battletoads exists as the quality of Battletoads.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I miss about Friends of Mineral Town that wasn't in the original Friends of Mineral Town on the Game Boy Advance, but it was a very key feature of the Back to Nature is you can't get a greenhouse. There's no greenhouse update or upgrade that you can get for your farm. So winter is just like you can't grow crops. And the like money trick in Back to Nature was you get that greenhouse and you plant pineapples in there, and you're just growing pineapples year round, and just making moolah off the pineapples.
I guess that's why they avoided it.
Yeah, but at the same time they're like, hey, buy a villa for like $10 million. Like, and it's like, how am I gonna even when I had in my second summer and did like just shit tons of pineapples, I'm up to like $360,000, maybe $400,000, I think. And I'm like, I'm never gonna have enough money. So in one of the upgrades you can get is you can basically buy a second house in the bottom of town, next to the Cybera's workshop. There's like an empty plot of land there, and you can buy basically a second home, a home in the city, that you can stay at.
It's a literal stone's throw away from your farm. What's the point?
I mean to be a rich douchey person that's done it, because it's like, yeah, it's either $1 million or $10 million, and then like 999 wood, 999 stone.
That's literally like if you do not put this game down, you play like you're in like your 30th year.
Yeah.
Like this is something you can do.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of like the truth gems or whatever that they have in the thing that's like you can't get some of those until you're in year 10 at the minimum. Or there's one for like walking 1 million steps in the game on your pedometer. And it's like, how, like, somebody like put up something on like the wiki or something that was basically like, yeah, if you just do this, if you just have your character running for like overnight in real time kind of thing, you can probably knock this out in like a couple weeks. You just have them like running 8 hours a night while you sleep.
Well, these things are definitely for people who
this is going to be the only game they play for the next 2 years.
This is their comfort food. They'll play this game for forever, because that's very much how I played Back to Nature.
It does very much have me like kind of wanting to go back to Stardew Valley, and I'm like, I need to fight the urge to do that because I know that would just suck me in again. But I think like the downfalls of Friends of Mineral Town is that it does, like, it is a throwback. They don't do enough to really modernize it, in my opinion. So it does feel like Stardew Valley does a lot of things better. Just as
Stardew Valley was literally like a project of like love and labor.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, keep me up to date on your Friends of Mineral Town time.
I will.
Very cool. Then let's round out with your Final Fantasy XIV update.
So Final Fantasy XIV, launched its 5.3 patch. Um, for anybody who's not familiar, MMOs, when they do a patch like this, usually it means it's a new section of content. For Final Fantasy XIV in particular, it means that it's a new section of the main story quest. Um, Final Fantasy XIV has the distinction of basically having the longest Final Fantasy story, in that it is a fantastic telling of hundreds of hours, not hundreds of hours, tens of hours of story over the course of this entire length of a hero's journey, and you come to a very conclusive point for the Shadowbringers expansion. Shadowbringers is the most recent expansion. It's been lauded as one of the best expansions the game's had. The game is at a really good peak right now of really good content. And 5.4 and probably 5.5 will be the kind of bridging content that will eventually get us to the next expansion. That being said, it is very likely that, so basically the story for Shadowbringers campaign has concluded at this point. It's been excellent. I'm very excited to where it's going next, where the story is going next, but also the game just continues to astound me with its ability to use its same kind of structure and mechanics to change the way that you play, in that the most recent expansion has literally a store a quest that lets you basically pilot a Gundam to fight against Emerald Weapon.
Sure. Yeah.
Great.
Why not?
It's great. It's a great game. It continues to be, in my opinion, the best Final Fantasy game. Just because it's unfair to compare other Final Fantasy games to it, because they can do more with this than anything else. But I think I'll end it on a note of somebody tweeted out something really amazing, which was, and I'm gonna butcher the quote here, but they're like, the story is literally like this. You'll do a quest and it'll be like, the quest is so impactful and beautiful and important and tragic, and then the name is a pun.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in my brief time with the game, it also, more than any Final Fantasy I've played, has so much love and reverence for the Final Fantasy series. I remember specifically one of the quests I did was basically just completely an homage to the Barret and Dyne dynamic in Final Fantasy VII, and going to the extent of lines of dialogue and how that whole scene ends, playing out basically beat for beat, and just being I love this so much, while also still developing your own character and whatnot. It was just that's one of the Final Fantasy XIV memories that sticks out for me, was experiencing that and being yeah, I had always heard this game gets it, and this game is for the Final Fantasy fans, and very much that reinforced that sentiment more than anything else in my time with it.
Yeah, it's this is a made up example that I just came up with, but it could be you're helping you're helping somebody who's being pursued by somebody who's murdered their family, and it's this very serious content, and then the quest will be named No Country for Old Mogs.
Yeah,
it's there's so much going on with this game. It's so good. It's so good on so many levels, and the way that they concluded kind of a big campaign point for Shadowbringers is just beautiful and wonderful, and I'm so excited for the future of this game. It's really entering a new phase of its existence with, because you're well, they won't let us actually do they won't actually let us kill this person or fight this person. Nope, they do. They do. They're oh, you other games, other MMOs would be no, these are the big bads. They'll be the enemies of entire expansions, and no, they they'll just let you fight them and kill them in awesome battles that are epic and cool, and just it's so cool, man. It's so cool.
It's definitely a game I would love to be able to play um, without the pressures of the MMO-ness. So, like, I think we talked a while back, like, if they, implemented something that was like, hey, you can play and you can do these things with AI bots instead of, like, other players if you want, like, I would absolutely be all for something like that. Or if I could, like, get together, like, a committed regular crew of people to sit down and play with, and could commit the time myself to really dive in and play with people, rather than relying on randos or something, like people that would have patience with me and my MMO noobness. I would be much more like that is a game that I regret that I just can't get into myself. Because yeah, like when I did play it myself, I like was leveling up a ton of different things. Like I was not really trying to pick a main. I was trying to like feel out every different kind of specialty, every different class, just to see like the story elements of each of those different classes. I had like most of them up to like level 15 or level 20 or something like that, just to see what
Yeah, you really got into it.
how those things were. And like I was doing it with like the fishing and the log cutting or whatever. Like I was doing it with all those dumb little mini games too. And I was having a great time with it. And then it was just I got to the point in the actual story progression where it was like going to be like back to back to back missions of like, nope, these are dungeons, you got to go do these with other people. And I was like, I don't want to do these with other people. I don't. That was not where I had fun in the game. But also it was just kind of the brick wall of like that was where I was going to get the
Yeah.
most experience to
Yeah,
actually
I
level
think
up.
something especially for me is I would
Stuff.
love to actually take time with you to go back, because there is actually a way. They'll probably patch it out. They might patch it out in the future. They might not. There's a real easy way, like within an hour, to power level somebody to level 60, and then you'd be more than capable of like. And the thing is about it is like I would love to like get a group of people together to play through that part with you. And the thing is, I think we know enough
Yeah, it's
people now who would probably do it.
yeah, probably. And it's like I never felt like I was under leveled
Yeah,
was
no.
the thing. Like I was doing the grinding and keeping up with the main story quest line, and it wasn't like I needed to power level or something like that. I needed to
It's a
get up to
matter of
level
like getting
60. It
people
was
together to do the dungeon. Yeah.
it was going into. I mean, the example I've told that specifically broke me was some mission where we went in and we were going around this mansion or something like that,
Yeah, you
and
walked through
like
the hallway
we
back.
we
Yeah.
progressed through stuff, and then it was like I like everybody disappeared, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and what I had to do was like go into the menu and like go back to the beginning of the space or whatever. And I was like, I how would I have known to do that? Just like naturally doing that until somebody mentioned that was what I needed to
Yeah.
do in chat.
The reason why is
and
because you
and I like didn't do that for five
yeah.
minutes or something like that. So it was like, yeah, it was I just felt like I was absolutely holding those people up and wasting their time, and I felt terrible
Yeah.
about that. So I don't want to be doing
I will
that.
say, the dungeon's originally designed to where you backtrack. The workaround of like teleporting back to the beginning of the dungeon is like something that was added later on or something like that. So like it's not
Yeah, I
embedded in
mean,
the
and that
feature
was
of
like
the
I
dungeon. It's a dungeon trick to pick up on.
yeah. Okay, but like I had even tried like because they were like we're back at the beginning. I was like like I was trying to get back to the beginning
Mm.
or whatever, and I couldn't do that. And finally they told me like do this and it'll get you back to the beginning. I was like okay, yeah, that's. But it was just yeah the and I feel like I was even trying to like follow along with a guide on like the dungeons to know what to
Mm.
do next, and just yeah I still struggled. So it's like that is the apprehension I have towards like those kinds of MMOs is like I don't like feeling like I'm holding other people up, especially randoms. Like if it was friends who like we're all on comms or something and somebody can just like absolutely like much quicker be like, hey Trevor, do this and come join us again, I'd be like cool. But even that is just especially with you know so many of our friends being scattered around so many different time zones, finding like good times and regular times to play with people. And then also like same with Destiny and stuff like that, I just don't like being locked into one game for such long stretches of time.
That's fair.
Just because I liked the variety of being able to play so many different things. I mean, like Avengers is coming up, and I very much imagine I will treat Avengers probably in the same way that I did Destiny, where I will play through it, I'll have a good enough time for it, and then I will bounce off it, and it'll probably like never really click with me to stick to coming back to it. It'll be like the first little flurry of gaming, and hopefully I'll have fun with it. Maybe hop on with some other people here and there, but like I'm pretty sure that's just going to be my relationship to those kinds of games at this point. Is do what I can single player, and then kind of move on to the next thing. But I'm glad I'm glad Final Fantasy XIV still kicking ass for you there. You're still having a great time with it. Wrapping up the show here, I'll talk about my last little thing,
really long
which
episode.
it did, yeah. I mean, I figure when you brought like 7 different things to the table, and one of them was DC FanDome, which had like 5 things within it, that it was probably going to be a little bit of a chatty one for us. Last thing I want to talk about is the Sea of Stars Kickstarter demo. So I backed Sea of Stars, which is the kind of the next game from the people behind The Messenger, Sabotage Studios, I believe. Messenger was one of my favorite games of the last couple of years. For those that didn't play it, it is kind of a very much like a Ninja Gaiden-esque throwback game, where it's also like a Metroidvania kind of style game, 2D action platformer that very much had a reverence for like the 8-bit and 16-bit eras of those kinds of games, but did a great job of modernizing everything to really it was very much in the same vein as like a Shovel Knight, in that it was clearly so heavily inspired by those games, but also forging its own path and trying to do its own thing. Messenger in particular, like the big kind of hook of the game that they were selling was that they showed off time travel by being like, oh, in the past you were in 8-bit art style, and in the future you were in 16-bit art style, and you could do that by traveling through portals, or I think maybe even eventually you get the ability to kind of like switch on a dime or something like that. Maybe not. Maybe it was you always had to go through certain areas. But it was, and even like not only does the art style change, but also the chip tunes that are playing change and become a much more like refined kind of music stylings and stuff in the future times, basically. And it was just a ton of fun. Had a great time with it. I absolutely hated the DLC that they came out with, the Picnic Panic or whatever that came out a year or so later, just because it felt like the difficulty curve on that was just like through the roof, absurd, and just like I could make it through a normal boss fight in the original Messenger, second or third try. Once you figure out kind of what the hook is, what you're supposed to do, you can make it through pretty confidently. But in the DLC, they added the Cuphead, like, we're gonna randomize shit kind of mechanic to you, which made it impossible to really like there were just runs that you wouldn't be able to do because of how the attacks fell and how you'd get fucked, and it was incredibly infuriating. And so I just really hated that element. But they announced their Sea of Stars Kickstarter a couple months back, and it very much like immediately had vibes of Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG 7 Stars from the Super NES. And it was also going to exist. It's like a super prequel to The Messenger kind of thing. So it's existing in the same universe as that series. So it's going to have, references and nods to The Messenger, but in this, completely different isometric RPG, action RPG kind of art style and design style. So I backed it like right away. Been very excited for it. And last week they released the demo to Kickstarter backers. So I hopped in and played that a little bit. Very, small. I mean, it's I would say it's significantly bigger than a PAX level demo, to the extent that I haven't actually completed the demo, but I put half an hour to 45 to maybe an hour into it the other night. And it's basically just a sense of like, here's the platforming, here's the, moving around the environment, here's the combat and how that feels. And it's very much, Mario RPG or Paper Mario, where it's you go in and you do a fight and you can, hit the button at certain times to power up your attacks, or your spells might have, different charge abilities based on, how you react and what buttons you push and stuff like that. Great music, great soundtrack, very much kind of, I said to Cam before we started recording, echoes very much like immediately feels like the Messenger soundtrack, which was one of my favorite gaming soundtracks in recent years. And it's interesting because like you're going through this little slice of the story and there's a whole bunch of like brackets redacted for spoilers kinds of things. Like you're clearly chasing after somebody, but it doesn't tell you who you're chasing after because it says that's redacted, and people will like make mention of characters that are redacted and stuff. And it's like, I'm curious if it is redacted for internal spoilers to the Sea of Stars story, or if somehow they're referencing characters from the Messenger, and like that's the spoilers they're trying to not give away and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just a cool little thing, and especially in this era where a lot of people are moving demos online, because the game's still not planned to come out until 2022. So they very much say up front, like, this is a game. Feel free to stream the demo. Feel free to give impressions of the demo, but also just understand that this is very early on in development. Things will absolutely be tweaked and refined and all that stuff. So this is really just kind of a slice of what we're going for, the vibe we're trying to commit to for this story. So it's cool to get to hop in and do that in this era of COVID and not having shows to go to and stuff like that. And just, yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So shout out to the team at Sabotage there for the work they're putting on this game. Cool. You basically you control two characters. And you basically choose the top of the demo. Like, do you want to be the guy who is like the sun spirit guy, or do you want to be the girl who's like the moon spirit? And for the sake of like, that's basically just for the sake of like moving around the world. Which of these do you want to be the main one moving? Because the other one's just kind of always in tow. But then once you slide into combat, you're controlling both of them and you're just taking turns. It's not tutorialized all that well, but I also like understand why, because it is probably just like a slice of the game. So like I definitely had to like try and figure out what I was doing on the fly, and stuff wasn't like explained to me, but it was still fun. Had a good time with it. Recommend checking it out if you were a Kickstarter backer. Yeah. Any questions or anything I can answer on that, Cam?
No, that pretty much explains it.
Yeah, we mentioned like you did not play the Messenger, so you don't really have
no
like a
foundation on
investment
it.
in that world or any of that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it definitely has that like I recently I hopped back into Secret of Evermore, which was one of my favorite games on the original Super Nintendo, and I was replaying that a little bit, I don't know, a couple months back, and like even the art style and stuff like that, I felt very much like was being evoked in this game. You like one of the towns I went to was basically like an underwater town, and I hit it with a mallet, and then the water drains away, and all these like seashell people and clearly like these people who live in these seashells and live underwater but are fine living out of the water came out, and suddenly I'm talking to them, and they're having these these conversations also filled with spoilers that are redacted and stuff. And then I had to go like talk to the priest. There was like a little I died like once in kind of the boss fight thing because I wasn't ready for it, and I like your health doesn't restore at the end of a battle or something like that, so you kind of have to be mindful of all that and heal up when you need to heal up and stuff. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Excellent. All right.
I look forward to seeing where they take the game down the line, because I think they're a very talented studio that clearly has a love for the same kind of generations of games I grew up with, and I love getting to see how they put their spin on those things with all the trappings of modern development. So it's really cool, and also just being a part of their Discord. Like, I don't check in on the Discord every now and then, but they're very active on it, and they're constantly sharing like sprite designs and stuff like that, and animations and stuff of like, hey, this is what this character is going to look like when he does this attack or something like that. It's like, it's cool getting to feel like I'm involved in the development process for it. So yeah, shout out to Sea of Stars when it comes out in 2022 or beyond. Yeah, that is gonna do it for this week's episode. Yeah, a long one, as you kind of pointed out there, Cam. But thank you for sitting down with me to chat about all these things. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to?
I'm going to give a shout out real quick to a little book called The Words Inside Me by Mario Rivera.
I saw this making the rounds after last week's like kind of funny community Zoom call.
I hopped in. I was like, oh hey, it's a little bit later at night. I'll just hop in and do like a quick like hi and bye, because there's some people in there that I think are cool. Like, I rarely ever get to talk to Mark because he lives on the other side of the world. And so I'm like, this will be a fun thing. Just hop in, say hi to everybody, say bye. Don't spend too much time there. I was there for a little bit more than an hour, and it is only because Mario made mention. He's like, yeah, I wrote a book, and it's like, wait, what? And somebody found it and got it, and it is a trip. It is basically his old MySpace blog posts in a book, unedited,
Okay.
like nothing, no changes were made in formatting, spelling, anything, and it is a trip.
I'm tempted to go and dig up my CVS Graveyard blog from when I worked CVS Graveyard shift at the like CVS at the corner of Mill and University by ASU. I spent, I don't know, like 3 or 4 months working there, and I would tell these stories on Facebook, and they just started out as like Facebook posts, and then they evolved, like people like were so enamored by them that I like turned it into a Blogspot blog, and would tell just kind of like, it was basically like my creative writing outlet before I started doing video games writing and stuff. And like the blog is still there. Last I checked, I don't know, prom weekend last year, I think or a couple years ago now, I guess. I remember I read like one of the most outrageous stories to like Gia, at, I think we were at, Underdogs. And I just kind of like told her some of those stories. I'm like, yeah, I could, like hearing this, I'm like, oh, I could totally like just pull all that and put it into book form, I guess. Totally a thing that I could do. I won't, but it is an intriguing concept. So yes, shout out to Mario Rivera's book.
Yeah, it's The Words Inside Me by Mario Rivera.
Cool.
Check it out. Also, shout out to make sure I say this right, because in my head I always mess it up. Shout out to Robbie Rob over at Robbie Rob Plays. He's actually doing the audio book version of it. So
Okay.
He'll have that out soon. Enjoy.
There you go. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Nothing really for me to plug. I guess like if you're still playing Fall Guys, you can go check out my ranking of all the Fall Guy lists that I did a week or so back. All the Fall Guy minigames. If I were to re-rank it now, Jinxed would probably be at the bottom of that list, because I'm just, every time I get into a game of Jinxed, I'm like, fuck this noise. But it's already like low enough, so I don't need to go back and shift things around. But yeah, Fall Guys, real fun if you're not like beating your head against a wall trying to get those 5 wins in a row trophies. And shout out to the people who are doing it with or without the exploit. I just don't think I have the patience to actually actively try and do that at this point. And I'm not going to let that define my Fall Guys skill. I'm quite content with my wins upon wins upon wins. So what if I don't have 5 in a row and ever get the platinum on that? I don't care. I mean, I care. I clearly care more than I should, but I'm trying to talk myself into not caring about it. But anyway, You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Check out thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, and maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show. This month's episode, I believe, is the one with you, me, and Frank sitting down talking about all the things we miss about just being in quarantine. And as we're nearing the end of the month, we got to sit down and record another early episode for next month. So we'll have to do that sometime here in the next week or so. Probably just in the next week, really. But that is going to do it. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Cam, for joining me. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.